Poet Elizabeth Bishop once wrote, "The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster."
Did you write that down first, or did you memorize it?
Hey, welcome everyone to this episode of the Cheap Seat Critics podcast, where we are covering Still Alice. With me today we have
Hello, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Geeky Writer.
I'm Crimson Maroon.
And I'm Sprinks, and hey, if you look up Cheap Seat Critics Podcast on the interwebs or the library computer, you'll find us on like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, Letterbox, YouTube, Rumble for a visual side of things. Yes, I know, audio podcast, but hey, we have that just in case you prefer it. So thank you for listening.
If you're looking us up on a library computer, don't get caught. Particularly if it's a school
Yeah,
library computer.
We have some educational things.
Yeah, I'm
we're talking
saying,
about Alzheimer's today. Very educational. Well, listen to us during your health class. There you go. Yeah, as stated, we're covering Still Alice from 2014 today. And before jumping in facts, I'll go with history because I'm curious. Starting with writer.
with the movie or the disease?
Both.
All right, yeah. Movie is, I had no history with it. I think I saw something from this movie out of context. Um, I did a lot of, as a lot of people did, I think everybody complained about Kristen Stewart back in the day because of Twilight. But I was referenced to this because she's an actress, so it was. Uh, I was recommended like a clip from this, I think, as an example of her like doing a good job as an actress, and that's pretty much the extent of my history with it. I was pretty much going in blind thereabouts, otherwise. And as with the disease, I have very minimal experience with it, but I have experience with it within a friend's family.
Hmm, a little tangentially, but yeah, got some of it. Uh, Sprinks. Yeah.
My history with this film is I didn't know anything about it until Crimson pitched it as his choice for, I believe, Decades.
Yes.
I think that was the first instance I heard about it, and then I didn't take that recommendation to go see it, um, and it wasn't until this season where Crimson brought it up again for his choice now. So first time watching it. That's all the information I have. I hadn't heard of the film prior to that. I don't think at all. And my history with Alzheimer's disease is I'm knowledgeable of it. And this movie did teach me things that I didn't know at at the time. So I like the education factor of that. Um, However, my grandfather currently has early onset stages of Alzheimer's.
Oh, I didn't know that. All right. For me, I've seen this movie twice. First time I saw it, it was a little hard one to watch. So that's why I didn't really watch it again. And I decided to pick it here because I was curious how it would affect you guys. Because for me, going into the Alzheimer's history, I've had two family members have it. Um, one who has passed and one who is currently struggling with it. Pretty late into it. Uh, so I didn't know if the movie just affected me because I have experience with it, or if it's pretty universal. So wanted to learn that through you guys covering it today.
Fair enough. I think it's a
And I watched it through the first time because my mom wanted to watch it. So full history. Cut you off right of what you're saying.
yeah. I was gonna say that's good as reasons I needs to pick something, right?
Yeah.
For the podcast.
Yep. 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 All right. We'll jump into the facts. There are a lot of facts to this film, but they're all like barely connected to the movie itself. It's all regarding the actors and stuff. and
Intrepid.
how they've worked together in other properties. So I didn't really include a lot of those because personally I don't find those all that interesting. But we'll go with the standard budget stuff. I had a budget of $5 million and a box office of 44,779,195 smackaroos, aka dollars. So it made a good profit and good awareness, which was the whole point of the film, was to bring awareness of Alzheimer's, and I think they did a decent job with that. But since you guys weren't aware that it came out, I don't know how successfully it actually reached out. Let's see what else we have here that I wrote. I decided to look up the average lifespan once diagnosed of someone with Alzheimer's because to me this movie seemed a bit quick, and they even bring it up that it's different patient to patient. So I looked up the average, and typically it's between 3 to 11 years on average, but it can be as long as 20 years. Um, I didn't find anything on how short it can be, but 3 to 11 is the average.
Is that
Wide,
lifespan,
wide
or is
range.
that like how long it takes
Upon
Alzheimer's to take effect?
diagnosis,
Yeah. Okay.
diagnosis, passing. So that's what that was. Hope that answered your question. So Julianne Moore, who played Alice, she got Best Actress for her role in this. Not too surprising. She did a pretty darn solid job here. Um, and for the research of this, she reportedly spent 4 months uh, talking to people who had Alzheimer's and deep diving into the disease. Her main consultant she worked with was someone named Sandy Oltz, who also had early onset arthritis, Alzheimer's, who was diagnosed at 46, so even earlier than Alice here. So that's kind of how you get the realistic vibes of the stages and stuff. She was present during the production of it. Let's see where we go. Alice played Words with Friends a few times in this film, and one
Mhm.
of the random connections that I found on here was Alec Baldwin was kicked off a plane before because he refused to turn off his plane while playing Words with Friends. Yeah,
That's
weird.
funny.
I don't feel like Alec Baldwin would be big enough to use a private plane instead of a commercial. You will. That's the same thing. And the last fact I'll go with is in late 2014, uh, a little before this came out. This came out in December. Sony got hacked, and several finished movies were retrieved from hackers and released before they were released. Still Alice being one of them. I don't know how that affected their box office, but I'm sure it did a little bit. I never knew Sony was hacked in 2014, so I think they did a good job sweeping that under the rug.
Oh, they're
I
famous
think I
for
knew about that.
getting hacked, actually. But then again, I'm more familiar with their PlayStation Network getting hacked than Sony
Well,
itself.
I do know that, yes. This one specifically, Sony Pictures was hacked in 2014. All right, those are my facts. Does anyone else have any before we jump in?
I do not technically have a fact, but I this movie did make me look up something about its composer. Because to me, I thought the music in the background. I mean, I guess for either one of you two, did you recognize anything like the music in the background sounded like?
No.
Like the OST stuff?
Yeah.
Um, no, nothing really stood out. But that could be out because I've already seen it before and I already associated it with this film.
Okay. To me, there were times where it reminded me of the Shawshank Redemption theme.
Interesting. I mean, similar instruments, I suppose.
Yeah, but I looked it up, and they're two different composers.
Mhm. Okay. With that, we shall jump into our coverage. We're doing a 3-act structure. We can jump around within the acts, doing a popcorn style within them, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. We'll see how it goes with this one. We shall. And the first act is the beginning to when Alice and John tells the kids about the Alzheimer's. The end of that conversation will be the end of the act, and we will start with writer.
All right. I'm gonna do something very controversial and start at the beginning.
Whoa,
I know. Uh,
slow down.
I know. One of the I kind of like that we start here like a on the like a more like a day in the life kind of. It's just her 50th birthday. And this scene does a lot of quick character building for everybody. Like we see how close Tom is with Alec Baldwin. John is his name in the movie.
Mm,
So we get to see how close they are as father and son. We also get to see Anna talking about her strained relationship with Lydia and with her, I think her husband at this point. They're married, or at least long term boyfriend. Um,
yeah,
and I think it was a very cool way, I guess, to introduce the concept of the story. Alice has her first like memory issue in the scene where she kind of spaces out for a second, and that's kind of like set up for everything that's to come. So we get a snapshot of what life is like, and what is I think supposed to be her first instance of like a having a like daydream slash memory issue, which I think was a very
yeah,
very good way to introduce the film.
yeah. Because it's in a subtle way, like they mentioned throughout in the beginning here, where just everybody experiences these little brain farts or these little lapses.
Yeah.
You guys going into this, I didn't spoil that it was Alzheimer's, right? I think I just said it was like a health movie, right?
I
Um,
don't recall.
I think you might have spoiled that it was Alzheimer's for me, but I don't remember our exact
I didn't
conversation.
remember. Okay. How ironic.
How ironic, yeah.
Uh,
I can assure you it's not the Alzheimer's. It's the fact that I'm writing too many stories simultaneously at once. That takes up a lot of brain space.
well, I don't remember if I did it. I'm not writing, but I'm drawing. While we're at the beginning, Springs, do you have anything in this opening bit as well?
Yeah, what is she drinking out of? She drinking out of a ramekin? She has a
Um,
tiny little pot or something in her hand.
We know she likes
isn't that
tea,
kind of
so it might be tea.
could be it? Yeah, isn't it kind of a like a Chinese type cup? Uh, usually they're wooden though. What I'm thinking of.
To me, those are usually like more open than like cauldron looking.
Depends where you go. I have no I don't know what it is. I'll be honest, but I assume it's tea because that's what she drinks a lot throughout the course of the film.
Yeah, I don't remember the cup right now. It's not something I focus on.
Okay. I guess just a funny difference because that's the thing that stood out most to me in that scene.
So at the most, was it just something you observed?
Out of that whole scene, that's the one thing I wrote down.
Okay, fair enough. Is there something you'd want to jump to?
Um, well, I guess immediately after when Alice is going over child age statistics, it reminded me of our conversation we had when covering Billy's balloon about all the
Or during her lecture.
age and yeah, about all the age and times of differences in children.
Cognition and stuff. Yeah, it's an interesting parallel. I I didn't see it that way, but I can see that connection there. And I don't know. Do you guys think they did a good progression at the start here, or do you think they front loaded it a little much with the? Because pretty much every interaction we have with her, there's something that that's a little off, a memory
I see what you mean.
thing, something along the lines. Do you think it was a good natural progression? Maybe a little too fast. What do you guys feel on that?
Ryder, do you want to go first?
Sure. I like that it's gradual. And honestly, since this is a very short film, like an hour and 40 minutes, I think they sort of were just condensing everything they needed to. It works. I don't have anything. I don't have any issues with it. I think it's because it's a progressively getting worse kind of thing. So the first we have at the dinner table is just like a, oh, you just missed like a few sentences that two people next to you were saying. Like that's normal. That's fine. And then she's missing like what she's supposed to say next for her lecture, but she quickly grasps back onto what it is, and she makes a joke out of it. So it's demonstrating she's used to public speaking and she's used to giving lectures, and she's obviously forgotten stuff in the middle of lectures before because that's the kind of stuff you do when you're uh, um, giving a lecture and forget something. So I think it works. I don't think they necessarily front loaded anything. I think that it's a gradual decline. Um, it would have been a bit too much if the scenes were faster. I think if the scenes were faster, then I think it would have felt like they were front loading too much. But I think they do a good balance.
All right, Franks.
Okay. I think the pacing of scenes of this first act is in the gradual decline to get to where the story's going is wonderfully done. And I think that works really well for just dropping us in the life of Alice and things going around. However, what I don't like, which I think is front loading, is the use of dialogue that revolves around a lot of "Do you remember that? When was this? Don't forget." That began to get a little nitpicky with me, or just like I felt like that should be more gradual, especially like through the whole course of the movie, and that felt heavy-handed to me at the beginning, especially before her diagnosis.
Um, I guess I can see the point you're making because they want to show how cognitive she is. She can multitask, she can keep track of dates, and obviously they set that up so later down the line when she doesn't remember these things, it's more apparent, and we actually have something to look back on and be like, oh, she was actually good at this stuff.
I have a
So I can see that. I don't think it too much though.
I yeah, again, if I were to I don't think it is. If I were to pick a point where I think it got a little to be a little too much, it might have been uh when Alec Baldwin was sitting on the stairs. But because I'm trying to think of examples of what you were saying, Springs. And I think the first one that jumps to my head was the when he's talking about, oh yeah, but I told you this, like I'm sure I did, when he's talking about how he was funding Lydia's artistic
Internship. Yeah.
endeavors. Yeah. Well, I think that's the one that stands out to me, but I think it works in the sense of it's something so minor that, like, yeah, of course it's something that they could forget because they obviously have both living very busy lives.
Yes. Um,
Do you
I
have
guess
any other
again,
examples? Because that was the main one that I thought of.
well,
I think he's talking
I
about
mean,
a lot of
yes,
the
that was the first
times
one.
that are thrown out for
It's
things.
yeah, it's in this first act that a lot of that dialogue happens of like, "Hey, remember we're doing this coming day," or "Don't forget this."
Oh, I
And
see what you're
it
saying.
seems to actually decrease over the film of not asking when they do know the diagnosis to like check in or test Alice, which I feel would be more appropriate. When those instances do come later, that's a lot of just talking behind her back, like, "Oh, that was a month ago," or "Oh, she forgot," or just stay silent and comfort her kind of moments when it's not like the dialogue here heavily before Alice even knows. Like it's more played to the audience of like this is the story being told, which to me didn't feel natural in that vein.
I see what you mean.
We're
what if I present?
kind of Alice though
Yeah,
in this.
I'm gonna present a perspective really quickly for Springs. So what if let's say that was the goal to front load all that because there's an expectation before she's diagnosed to actually remember all that because that's what her life is at that point. And the reason they don't have that expectation afterward, the reason they stop asking her about times is because they know that it's difficult for her. So they're not trying to make it more difficult for her. In that way, they're not trying to like make her feel worse for forgetting something.
Yeah, that's kind of the talk they had at the table, like, Act 2, I think. that Anna and Lydia fight over because Anna
Yeah.
doesn't want to have her remember stuff she's not going to remember and stress her, while Lydia wants her to treat her as a normal person still.
See, again, at that point, it's like they know of the situation at hand. The beginning is like no one knows the situation at hand. It's just focused on parts of the scene of this is the story we're telling kind of thing, which to me is hand-picked moments of the life to go with the story, then feeling the natural what they use of naturally like just day-to-day life and the slow decline to
Okay.
get to that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with that. They definitely they handpicked these moments in Alice's life to highlight the decline rather than flowing naturally through something. I don't know if I'm willing to say that's um, uh, unnatural or a flaw against the film because I'm in the boat of when you're writing a script, you need to be very efficient with your with what you're doing, especially when you have time slots under 2 hours. So I agree, it's probably it probably leans more onto the unnatural side of storytelling, but I don't necessarily view it as a bad thing or a bad choice that they made as a creative team.
Can you give me an example of a part that feels unnatural?
No, there's no again, my original thing to go with the whole first act felt naturally in that vein of this life of Alice
Yeah.
to the point of Act Two, but the dialogue usage selected of "Don't forget, remember this," all that feels heavy-handed to me going in because that's all in this first act and doesn't really come up as we go along.
I don't know because I do feel like they still bring up schedules. He brings up his meeting that he was going to have with one of the higher ups. Um, uh, we had Lydia's play. We had her appointments or her schooling stuff. I feel like they do bring up a lot of her schedule things. I don't feel like it just suddenly drops out once she's diagnosed. I feel like it's still there.
To me, that when she is diagnosed publicly to the family, to me that's a switch into the knowledge that all the characters now then know, so they act around her differently in given situations, which to me sees as a more like a test or a check-in or a comfort. Whereas beforehand they don't know, so they everything's just normal. But that's
Yes.
to me heavy-handed because of the story.
So you think in this family dynamic or the people that just talk to her about what she's going to be doing going forward, asking her about plans and stuff, you don't think it's within these characters to do that? And you think it's more writer driven? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I do think it's more writer driven for scene to scene to scene of remembering.
Huh. Yeah, I guess I'll just disagree on that because I feel like a lot of people do just remind each other of dates and stuff. That happens to me all the time. Okay.
I mean,
Uh,
it could fall into that of just difference of each other because it doesn't happen to me all the time. So it's just could just be how I view it as different from someone else's normal.
yeah, and considering we're in the realm of like it being anecdotal, do you see it as a a problem still, or is it still like middle
I see it
that's
as a nitpick because to me it makes what could be very smooth in my eyes of this first act a little bumpy by the writing choices of what the dialogue is. Because then to me that strictly focuses on everything is about memory rather than the actual realistic feel of Alice focused. Because to me, I really got that when she gets lost in the park. And then going from there, I mean, I think that's the good first hit that something's up with Alice, and then seeing where she goes with it rather than the characters around not knowing, giving dialogue to the audience of this is the story.
yeah, I just see their interactions more than just talking to the audience. I guess that's just where we differ on that one. Uh, let's see, what was yeah, my initial question I didn't even answer myself. Yeah, the progression here I think worked fine, smooth for the most part. Uh, I think the beginning here gets better once She goes to her second or third doctor or neurologist visit. I think it's the third one when John was there.
He
Uh,
was there for the second one. No, wait, you're right. Third one.
Is the
yeah,
third one.
third one. Uh, where it's brought up that with intelligent people, they kind of work around the early signs, so it's not present. So the beginning here, she's already been dealing with it, and she's been subconsciously canceling it out, ignoring it, or working around these things. So he said that the buildup's been years on the brain scan, the PET scan. So I think she's later in the stages than in the beginning we're led on because we aren't told that she's probably been having this for years. Just little things here and there.
Yeah.
I think that betters this.
You mean it betters their gradual progression?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
initially when I was looking at this critically, I was like, okay, I feel like it's a little bit much because it does feel like every scene with her there's something. But once they deliver the line, she's had this for years. It just hasn't been obvious because she's worked around it mentally. Then I'm like, okay, she's later than I thought. Therefore, this makes more sense to me.
Yeah. It's
That
like a
makes sense.
one of the reason I think it the reason she ends up going to visit the doctor in the first place is because a lot of that was happening in sequence now, which is why it scared her.
Yeah, it's actually past her subconscious and now into her acknowledgement. Sprinks, you got a point to jump to.
Sure, let's see here. At 9 minutes and 13 seconds, when Alice is out for a jog, there's a pigeon in the road that does not
Yep.
care about anybody. I didn't know if that's a trained bird for how calm it is.
It's in New York. Pigeons don't care about people. I know which pigeon you're talking about too. It walks like in her path and then turns around and then they
It just
cut to a
walks
different
back.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Uh,
100% don't believe that to be a trained pigeon. That's just New York pigeons.
yeah. Nah. I've lived in a lot of places now, and you can definitely get a vibe of a place of like how the birds react to people, and the more densely populated places are, the less they'll care about people being around. Because it's like they're more climatized to it, or they've evolved to kind of tolerate that.
Okay. Hey, so I guess great work then, having a bird in that scene, naturally or not, to help give more of a feel of New York.
That bird should have gotten paid. So that's what I'm hearing.
It may have.
It got screen time. It may have
It did.
It got paid in in
adversity.
exposure. I think there were a bunch of protests about that person.
You know what? You know what, guys?
Yes, the
A,
exposure.
a character we can't take out of this film, the bird.
I don't know. I think we can cut the bird out. The bird doesn't even have a name. Okay, that barely constitutes as a character to me. So,
But no, but it's demonstrating the character of New York, though. It's kind of integral to the.
all right, I'm good with this bit. Time to move on to a writer point.
Oh, writer point. I like the introduction to Lydia. Lydia is introduced separately from the rest of the family because she's kind of the black sheep of the family, and I'm using that in 50 cents of quotation marks. But like, I mean that in the archetypal sense. She's not really close with anybody in the family outside of her parents, which who she tries to maintain contact with and stuff like that. And I quite like that because Lydia actually has a profound effect on uh, Alice over the course of the film, and I think I just quite like their introduction scene. It's very simple. Um, it's you get very much a like a starving artist kind of vibe. Uh, um, from her, and then they go out to lunch and chat about college and other things. So
Yeah, I like the introduction of Lydia as a character, not just like her intro scene, because the other two siblings, Tom and Anna. They're like right brain, Lydia's left brain. Uh, so a lot of times we see Anna, she's very analytical and not too emotional when it comes to things. Well, Lydia, she's not super emotional, but
Oh,
she
you
is
said the brain
empathetic.
hemispheres. That's why you confused me. It's the opposite of what
Yes.
you said.
Oh, other way around.
Yeah.
Whoopsies. Uh, there you go. Left, right. Uh, but point still stands. I like that they had a difference between the siblings. Then you can argue like how important some of the siblings are, like Tom, which I'm sure we'll get into that going further, because some kids get more screen time than others.
Yeah. But going from their intro scene to this, you also get a sense of how much like at least Anna and Lydia dislike each other, or they how often they at least they butt heads. Um, and
Yeah, they do, but heads most interactions they have here.
I and Tom is obviously has a very close relationship with his dad, which I do like, um, however subtle it is. But yeah, I quite enjoy Lydia's introduction as well. It just shows how different she is from the rest of her siblings in that regard.
Mhm. What do you think, Sprinks?
I agree. I do like the introduction of her.
What do you think? All right. Well, I'll go with the first doctor visit, the John Black 42nd Washington Street, Hoboken. I got it. I totally didn't read it off my notes. Uh, I probably would have failed that test if I was actually there. I would have I would have gotten the John Black. I would not have gotten the address. Once you gave
um,
the multiple choice options, I would have, but innately I would not have been able to remember. Assuming it's like a half hour doctor visit or something. I wouldn't. No way. Oh, you guys know I have a terrible memory.
don't worry, I do too. I probably I'm like you. I probably would have got remember the name, um, but I think I wouldn't have gotten the address until I got the multiple choice.
Frank, how confident are you?
I think I would have done it. I think I'm like a 9 out of 10.
Pretty confident, right? And we get he lists out her age, 50, the date, November 26th, which is something I wish they did more in this,
To keep
was
track of
keep
time.
time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like subtle stuff, like kind of have to track it based off of Anna's pregnancy. Is kind of what I've been going off of, because they throw out a lot of numbers here and there, like that was a month ago. I'm like, oh, okay, we just got that jump there. Uh, and it's very loose and hard to follow the timeline, which I don't know if that's better or worse for the film. I'm sure they want it blurry to make it feel a bit more snappy, but I don't know. What do you guys think on that?
Uh, why don't you go first this time, Springs?
I'll need the question re-asked.
How do you feel they did with the passage of time? Do you think they should have been a bit
Oh,
more obvious with it? Do you think
no,
they did just enough?
they did perfect.
Perfect.
Passage of Time was great. And there's was it Act 2? I think Act 2 has my favorite instance of that.
Is that the month
The
Pass.
ago bit?
can't find the phone.
Yeah. Um, um, I don't. I'm kind of in a not. I don't think it was perfect, but I don't have any issues with it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's the like analytical part of my brain that really would want like more dates to better keep track of time and everything like that. That being said, I understand I don't necessarily need it because I can watch the film and understand that the passage of time is just at most maybe a year or two, and I think that's perfectly fine. Um,
Yeah, that I think my biggest issue in regards to time is once the babies are born, because that's our anchor for
Yeah,
the film. Once they're born, anything past that, I don't know. Once she's with Lydia and barely says anything anymore, I don't know if that's a year past the babies, weeks, months. I don't know.
yeah. Like I said, there's definitely I would like some harder points towards the end, but I don't necessarily know if I need that, if that makes sense. So
That last part, that one just bugs me because that's the biggest leap. Like she's still coherent. She remembers the babies. Um, because we get let's get into the third act stuff. We'll cover it later. But in terms of time, I think that's where we need something.
okay.
I think everything else is okay.
I think the time. I
That
think
last stage.
yeah. I think the progression of time here in the first act though is excellent. I think it's very like we're tracking it by holidays. We're tracking it by uh,
Events.
work and other things, doctor visits. There's a I think the first acts in terms of keep track of time was brilliant. Since time is a factor in the especially since time is a factor in this film. So
Ryder, you want to jump with a point?
sure, um, like that progression of the doctor ruling out other like because Alice comes across as a very intelligent woman, and obviously she teaches a lot in higher education, specifically with how the brain functions with language and stuff like that. So I like that she already has her suspicions of what it is, and I like that the doctor helps her rule out certain things. Um, I actually quite really quite like Alice's progression as a character in general for the first act. So this is more of a I guess a general point that I was dancing around that I'm just gonna get to now. Uh, but I quite like the fact that she doesn't immediately tell everyone in the family that she has a problem because she doesn't know for certain what it is up until she gets to a breaking point.
Yeah, once the neurologist kind of forces her hand and gets someone has to get involved.
Yeah,
Has to bring it with somebody. And I did like how okay the visit where she was supposed to bring someone but didn't. Did she do that intentionally or did she forget and play it off?
I get
That's because I don't know.
I get the impression she did it intentionally, but you can read whatever you want into it. Either that she forgot or it was intentional, and I think both are good. It's like both are thumbs up, pretty much.
Yeah, they both work. I just didn't know which one you guys felt was the
I
most
think she
effective
forgot
outcome.
and played it off.
Yeah, I think I might be leaning in that camp,
I mean,
but
how much
they're
we've
really
already seen of
close.
her memory play up to that point. I think that's where I like.
Uh,
It's like 51-49.
Yeah, I'll tell you
We're
why.
at the edge.
I'll tell you why I'm leaning the other way, which is again, as you say, 51-49. The reason I lean the other way is because she didn't tell John about her like memory skip when she ended up at the university and she was on her jog. She didn't tell John about that, or uh, and obviously that's some that once we reach that episode, obviously that's what triggers her to go to the hospital in the first place. But the fact that she never tells John that speaks to me that she doesn't really her first instinct is not necessarily to explain to her family, um, but she obviously does when like it reaches a certain point. She wants to have near certain information before she involves them because they all are busy with their own lives too. So I took that as her not wanting to be a bother some like wife when she wants to be a strong independent woman, which I can respect. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm leaning just a little bit in the other direction. But as you say, it's pretty fucking close.
Yeah, I can jump either side. I'm fine with both options. Sprank's jumping point.
Um, well, the first doctor visit, I actually really enjoyed that it's a one shot that focused all on Alice without cutting to anything else.
Oh, actually, yes, I have that in my notes as well. To add on to your point there, Springs, I like that we don't see the doctor until the second visit. So we're entirely focused on Alice's reaction for the information being spilled out to her. Like she's trying to rule out potential problems, and we get to see her react more viscerally to like the realizing she couldn't remember the simple address. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she zipped through all the other questions very easily, and then she hit the wall there, and she knew it. Which I'm glad they went the route of she's like super intelligent, so we can see the full fall instead of she's like a janitor or something, which would still be an interesting point of view. But I think the higher you are, the greater the fall type deal.
Ah, you subscribe to
With
If I'll cut
Aristotle's
in,
definition of tragedy.
if
Interesting.
I'll cut in academically intelligent.
I
Nothing
mean,
says a janitor can't be intelligent.
she's kind of both, but you are right. Funny how that spun around back from Field of Dreams when you call janitors dumb. That was nice. Good. You've grown as a character through the podcast. Good.
No, thank you.
Uh,
No one appreciated my
yeah.
reference, but it's okay.
What was it?
No, it's fine. Leave it dead. It's okay.
All right. Yeah, audience will get it. Thumbs up from the audience. I can tell. Let's see. I like John throughout this film, but it's definitely like a good thumbs up here once he finds out. But well, the not the morning bit. That's when he finds out. He's all groggy, tired, you know, kind of in denial about the
In the bed, you
prospect.
mean?
But yeah, but once he's actually with the doctor, I really like that whole segment where he clearly did his research on it beforehand, because he was spitting back every single time the doctor gave like this is a reason. He's like, well, this could be this could be that. He's like, yes, but then you have this. And I like that clearly did research, educating himself on it beforehand.
Yes, I'm in agreement. I really
Very
John.
supportive.
Yeah, I really like John as a character, and I actually feel like uh, from I think an average viewer probably would walk away with more mixed feelings about him, which I totally understand as well. Because he's not, he's not the perfect husband, but he definitely comes
It's
across as very human, which I really love about him as a character.
Yeah, John's very interesting because I agree. If you're someone who completely isolated from Alzheimer's, has no interaction with it at all, I can definitely see John being not the greatest. But when you're with it with somebody, you can feel what John feels and completely understand all of his actions. They all really make sense. Even the statement Alice makes towards him act 2 or 3, whichever, when, uh jumping ahead again.
Yeah,
We'll
well,
go back to
I
it.
know
It's
what
fine.
you're talking about. We can hold off on
Yes.
that.
It all makes sense. I think John's actions really work well.
um, Jumping back to is it
Sure thing.
the doctor scene for that as an example. I also really like that too because it shows it's a more subtle way to show that John really does care uh, about his wife. He's willing to push back on the doctor's points because he doesn't want to accept it outright, and which is again a very human thing. And the he and the doctor ultimately agree to take a genetics test in which to in order to like be certain that it is what they think it is, and uh, it's good stuff. I quite like it as well.
Thanks, what do you think?
About John?
John, the doctor visit, both. It's Right, and I kinda talked about it.
Yeah. I I like how well goes into a bigger thing, but I think John's a good character. I like him, and his reactions to everything's going on, and then John's with the doctor visit. Uh, it just seems very protective, um, but also to go about it safely, and to make everything like double checking with the doctor himself, because it's a new environment for John, and a new thing on his plate, going with the Mayo Clinic and everything else happening and the possible move and all that. So, uh, yeah, I found him very believable.
Good, good stuff. I like it. Let's see. Who was the last one I popped to before I took that?
That was
We'll
right.
go with Ryder. Oh, we'll go with you, Springs. Where did we go on that?
I didn't know that carriers of Alzheimer's have 100% of development.
Oh, you mean passing it on? You mean?
Yes, that is 100%.
Yep. Uh, man, this is gonna turn into my college education a little bit. It's really weird how the genetics field works, and that like it's um it's 100% chance that you'll pass on the gene, but it's 50-50 of whether it'll be like active, if that makes sense. Um, which is why uh one of the kids tests positive and another one doesn't.
And going forward, those kids, if they were to have kids, could then have it, or it could be uh, dormant as well. Except for Anna's case with her kids, she was able to counter that with the IUI thing, which I didn't really fully understand because I'm not not a scientist.
I understand the terminology, but I don't necessarily understand the full scientific concept between a lot of what what the IUI was, because that's not what I study. Funny enough.
Yeah,
Uh, but cool. It was cool to um one thing I guess. Hi, I'll kick you right. I'll go next if you don't mind, Springs, unless you have more to say on the point.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I got one little bit to jump on there before
Okay. Then you
that,
go ahead.
because they talk about she has the rare form of it, and I was curious how rare is rare because they don't really say. 5% of Alzheimer's. So there you go.
Oh
To
yeah,
jump off.
pretty rare. One of the shoot, my point's gone. Oh well. It's
God
funny. Yeah,
darn it.
I know. Oh well. Uh, let's see if I can find another one really quickly. Uh, I like when they actually get out of the doctor's office, the second visit with John. I like that John is frustrated with everything but the Alice and the Alzheimer's. Like he's frustrated with the elevator. I think that was very like um health is not the right word, but it's a very human way that the emotion slips out of what he's really feeling. He feels frustrated and down because, his wife is getting diagnosed with it and he's obviously terrified of it. And he's taking that anger out by complaining about the elevator. I actually quite liked that.
Yeah, he gave himself an outlet for
Yeah,
his feelings. Yes,
exactly.
felt very real. So we have talked about the announcement to the kiddos, and I actually I'll just ask you guys how do you think they handled the scene, the writers? Do you think it was good? Do you think there should have been a
Writers.
bit more time on this scene? Should have there been more interaction? Or do you think just right?
I think just right.
Just right for me. Um,
Something I noticed this film does that I do like, which help keep it in realism, is there is no pause of big statements. Like she doesn't say it and then there's a pause of like the characters taking it in, which is also the audience taking it in. There's none of that. There's no movie moments like that in this film, which I think greatly benefited.
I
yes.
can agree with that. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
can, I actually, it's probably my favorite scene. Well, it's not my favorite shot of the film. Um, I quite like that everybody's relationships is also portrayed in the scene. You get Anna and Lydia butting heads. You get uh, Tom. kind of in like the well, just the wrong word for it, but he's similar to his
Skeptic.
dad, so his dad has to be the one to kind of explain it to him more concretely, in a way that he can understand immediately. And we get Lydia being the more like, oh, she now that she understands, she put together the other puzzle pieces because she's the one that overheard some of the memory instances from before, and that leads to Anna getting angry with her, frustrated with her. And I quite like the scene a lot because it also reinforces everybody's relationships and how they function with one another, which is very difficult to do on top of everything else. So I appreciated the subtle intricacies of that.
I agree completely, and I like how Alice broke down once because she didn't break down when she was saying she had it, but once you deliver the news, the kids have it. Uh, air quotes have it,
They could have it, yeah.
uh, yes. Uh, that's when she starts breaking down and apologizing to them, and really shows her focus is on the kids and not really herself here.
Yeah, because at that point she's had time to digest it for herself. But now having her kids look at her, it's the appropriate time to have a character break down a little bit.
Briggs, you got a jumping points.
Let's see here. When Alice asks her students what the syllabus is of what they're
Syllabus,
covering for the day,
yeah.
I found that to be it triggered something in my mind of like I've had teachers before do that, but how many of them are connected to possible Alzheimer's themselves over that? Could be zero,
Yeah, I was gonna
but
say
just
could
the
be zero.
connection of that slightly scared me.
Um, I definitely see what you mean. It's a very common thing. A lot, as far as I understand it, it's just the teacher's way of like making sure their students actually read the syllabus and knowing what's going on today. And sometimes,
Mm,
they generally have lost their place because they had pre-recorded, or they've prepared a bunch of different lectures all at once, so they just need their quick reminder. I'm like, all right, which one is it for this class today? Because especially when you get into college, like the education that she's teaching in, they could be teaching like several variations of the same subject, but they all could be at different points. In terms
Yeah,
of like their lecture schedule. So, um,
I like how subtle this film is. There's going to be something I bring up, I think, in Act Two, but here in the room, she doesn't have that many students anymore. Like she was this big hotshot during her initial speech. She's this uh, prominent figure, this teacher. You would think she'd have a full room, but at this point, she had a handful of students left, and there's enough to infer that they've been dropping the class because we get to hear the students say they aren't learning stuff later. Uh, so you can see there's effects going on in the background indirectly as well.
is this going into Act Two? Because I think that's an Act Two scene.
Once she's talking to Eric or whatever, yeah, that's later. But the classroom thing we just talked about. mm,
yeah,
I
in a
think
smaller
no, I
classroom.
think that's Act Two because that happens after the kids. Because she gets called and the kids tell her that uh that they're positive and negative. So I think we were in Act Two now.
I'll speak get back on springs. Whoopsies. uh, Point still stands.
Yeah,
I just like the subtle background stuff with it.
yeah. I'm not bringing it up to whatever. I guess I got a point. I'll jump to for I quite like the when Alice decides to tell John that she's might have Alzheimer's, like in their bed. It's very early in the morning and they're both groggy, or he's very groggy when he's woken up and he wants to listen to her. I quite like that his initial reaction is to try and like calm her down and talk her out of it until she snaps at him and he realizes that she just wants to be comforted. I think that was a very good relationship scene.
Yeah, Mine that she was talking about how she's built up her whole life, worked hard for who she is, and she feels like she's losing herself, or she's dying, as she was putting it. I think was really well delivered, and good decision to put that in there as well. Good. 'Cause, I would be convinced to comfort her at that point.
A a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, a point I can jump to is when John is late. And this is pretty early from his trip he had, and I guess this is another hint of uh, Alice being poignant with scheduling because she kept track of him being late. Uh, and she wrote during her jog, "Where are you?"
Oh, when she got back? Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt like she would actually spell out "Where are you?" instead of "Where" and then an R and then a U instead of shortening it.
Um, yeah, I suppose that could be a nitpick. She definitely comes across as the kind of person that would spell her words out.
Yeah, yeah, certainly a nitpick, but something that I was like, that doesn't seem like she would write that. That would be my nitpick. Spriggs, you got something to jump to?
Looking at my notes, I only have one thing left here for Act One, which is at 1844 during the Christmas Day gathering. My notes say demon sister because that's how she was described, but that's on Anna. Um, Anna's husband calls someone in the background Slider, and I don't know if I've ever heard of like a champ, boss, chief kind of remark with calling someone Slider.
I think I've heard that term um, in that context before, but it's definitely like an older term. You wouldn't really hear that now,
Yeah, I
and
know
especially
Slugger,
with like
but
Charlie. I think his name was Charlie. Someone in his 20s, maybe early 30s, using that. Probably not.
I'm guessing he's calling it
Wow,
Tom in the other room.
probably. Yeah, and then that could just be a term he uses just for him. Not like not quite like a pet name or anything, but like just
A
a word
nickname.
associated with someone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, okay, go ahead, Red.
uh, well, I have a kind of a funny interpretation that I've obviously thrown away by now, but I thought because it was my first viewing of the movie, I actually thought John was cheating on Alice with all the phone calls and leaving the table and having to walk away. Obviously, I throw that away by the end of the film, but it was a funny thing that I tried to keep track of in my notes, um, going through the film.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was going to be a question I was going to ask. Do you think that was something they were playing with, or just something that one could interpret?
I think they were definitely playing with audience expectations. Um, it's because it happens so often. Like it's like he's focusing too much on that more so than his wife. It's definitely something you can interpret away from it. I do think it's intentional. They're playing with the idea of it and at least the expectations of the audience. I don't think he actually did, to be clear. But
Hmm. He's a loving husband from all accounts I can tell. Frank, you said interesting.
Yeah, I never picked up on that. That the possibility that he's cheating.
Now that it's brought up as a possible read, do you see that as a possible read?
I guess so. Yeah, I could see it as
Okay.
a possibility. I just never interpreted that from him and how he acts with Alice.
Totally fair. I think we all agree he didn't cheat, but
yeah,
um,
I think it was just more he's more focused on his job.
yeah, he's
He
very
can't lose his job.
yeah he's very career focused, which is they both are technically to be real. I think the reason they fell one of the reasons they fell in love as characters in this universe was they are both career focused heavily.
yeah, yeah, they are.
Um, And I guess I have one more quick note. I guess on this act before I think I'm done. I liked that Lydia is sitting separately from her siblings again during the family meeting. Just another visual way to show the difference, I suppose.
Yeah, the vision between them.
Mhm.
Sprinks, I imagine you'd probably bring it up later, but it does pop its head in the first act. Uh, I imagine you like the focus that they play with in this film.
Yes, I was gonna bring that up later, but yeah.
'Cause, we get it on her jog and a couple other places.
Yeah. I'm not the cinematography guy, but I obviously think the intention with that is they're playing the more blurred out the background is, the more intensive like her memory problem is in that moment.
Yeah, so it's definitely tied to her mental state at the time.
Yeah.
I guess my last point in this act is the uh, the words she was leaving herself on the chalkboard while she was making dinner. Uh, I really liked that. I think that was a nice detail. I think they do a lot with details, like the highlighter bit later, which we'll cover. Something I would never have thought of, but it's cool. Her putting up words to memorize within a couple minutes to check her thoughts. Nice. The addition of the words with friends. Uh, good. Anything to show her working with herself is a good addition for me. And it makes all that worse once those things start disappearing further down the film.
I agree, and I think bringing up the words that she's talking about in the while she's making dinner, I think that was my original point that I lost. It was something to do with that, and there's a lot that happens in the scene. Obviously, Alice gets introduced to somebody, and then she realized she forgot the recipe for butter bread something. It was something to do with bread.
Yeah.
Bread
Did I
pudding.
have bread pudding? Yeah.
Yeah, she forgot the recipe to the bread pudding and had to look it up. And she forgot that she was already introduced to Tom's girlfriend at the time, which
Yeah,
was,
Jenny.
yeah. And then because those are all happening at once, you get a sense of now it's growing more intensive because it's back to back to back to back. So like it's increasing in frequency. The memory skips, you know.
Yeah, and that was something I wish they added here with the bread pudding was because Lydia was excited about it. It's like a staple that her mom makes,
Oh, you mean
and
like she can taste the difference in the
if
recipe?
she's like, "Did you change the recipe?" Yeah,
Yeah.
some acknowledgement
Yeah,
that
I was
she had to look
expecting
up the
that
recipe.
too. I was expecting that too, actually. I thought they were setting it up that Lydia would notice that the recipe's changed.
Yeah, which that could be in when she says later, "Oh, I noticed little things," like she didn't remember Jenny's name. She could have also noticed the recipe was different, but she didn't say that.
Yeah,
Just a little thing I feel like is a little obviously missed out. It'd be a little easy, quick thing to throw in there.
I am in agreement. It's not like I'm not going to dock you points for not having it, but it just feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, definitely missed opportunity. Unless Sprinks disagrees.
Nope.
All right, on to Act Two. Uh, Telling the kids about Alzheimer's to after Lydia's play, and this counts the backstage talk. So, we will start with Sprinks.
Let's see. In my notes here, I have only been about a half hour into the film, and the music is making me think this movie is not going to have a happy ending.
That's a good note.
Do you want to? Would you like to say anything to your past self, Sprinks, while you're alive?
He was correct.
Right on the money.
Damn, predictive abilities.
Then right after that, I got timestamp 31 minutes 44 seconds, which I believe is when she's at the in the bathroom. That music reminded me of what made me look up and thought it sounded like the Shawshank music.
I might have to revisit that scene because, yeah, oh, I can't picture that specific part with the music.
The music of like the very beginning of Shawshank, where like Andy's in his car.
Yeah, down in the dumps.
Yeah,
Oh man, that's My evidently I had too much caffeine today because you prefaced your sentence by saying Shawshank, and when you said Andy, I immediately went to Toy Story first, and I'm like, this
Yeah.
is somehow incorrect. I don't know why my brain did that. That's
Andy Dufresne.
That's pretty good. And a different.
yeah. You prefaced it with Shawshank, so I knew you were talking about Dufresne, but my brain still went to Toy Story.
I brought up in Act One that I would bring up something here, and that would be the attention to detail stuff. So we see, obviously, very obviously, that she has shampoo or conditioner or something, some product in the fridge that does not belong there. And it's like, okay, she's putting stuff in places that don't belong. That's a stage. And if you pay attention, there's moments where you can see why is that there? She must have put that there and didn't realize it. Like when she's searching the kitchen for her phone, uh, in the jar she tips over the money jar. There's a lemon in there. She pulls a potato out of the knife drawer. There's just these random objects that if you're not really paying attention to, you wouldn't notice and it wouldn't detract, but it definitely adds once you actually see those things that they just snuck in there.
Yeah, you definitely get a sense of like the spiral starting, you know.
Mhm.
Um, my I have no objective reason, but I think my favorite shot in the whole film is when she's going to go speak to her supervisor, the dean at the college, and we're tracking her like walking around the library, like with the around like a quad in the center, um, which I quite like that shot.
Yeah, that's a pretty good shot. I don't know if I have a go-to shot
If you don't
off the
mind me
top of my
asking,
head.
what about that shot makes it your favorite?
Oh, I said I have no reason. I just
Oh,
I think it's
You got the vibes.
the vibe of it. I think it's the movement of it, the kind of the build. It's kind of helped building the tension to the scene that's going to come afterwards. Um, those are all my guesses, but I legitimately don't know why I like the shot. I just enjoyed it.
You Sprinks, your favorite shot.
my favorite shot is in the last act.
Oh, is that the screenshot
Yep,
you had me
so
saying?
much so that I got my own personal screenshot to give to the visual side of things over on YouTube and Rumble when we get there.
We'll hold it. Since I'm thinking about it, I think my favorite shot is also in the next act. So I'll hold it and forget that I'm holding it. So
How weird it would be if we had the same shot.
it's not.
I have a
Uh,
guess at what your favorite shot is, Crimson, and I'm pretty sure I agree as well. It's a brilliant shot.
we shall see.
We shall see indeed.
Once one of you reminds me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I'll write it down on my phone if I can't answer these questions. Who knows?
yeah.
Hey, I'll bring up an issue
All right.
that I have with the movie
We need issues.
because it doesn't give an explanation, and maybe it's a detail I missed, and that's the explanation given that maybe Crimson found.
Sure.
But when she's yelling with John from missing like the event, and he's like, "I contacted you, everything, I emailed you," and she goes, "I can't have my phone on me.
Yeah.
Why?"
Okay.
This is
So,
okay.
oh, if right if you want to go
Um,
at it. So
this
after
this
my
is actually this is a very very stupid but simple thing. I don't like taking my phone out when I'm on a jog either, and the simple reason is just I hate the weight of it. Um, there obviously could be a lot more that the writers and stuff intend with that. Um, but I'm also, funny enough, I guess a victim of I guess the that concept. I've been accused of leaving my phone behind, which is true. I do that intentionally because whenever I'm on a jog, it's me time, and I don't want the outside world to interfere. You know what I'm saying?
So it relates to you on a personal
Yeah,
experience
that's a
versus like
personal
past.
experience one. I don't know if it's an objective issue. But that's my anecdotal
So,
reason, I guess, as to why I didn't perceive that as an issue personally.
so my explanation of the scene, and it's common with a lot of Alzheimer patients, is they hit a point where they're starting to lose in self reliance. They kind of start becoming codependent on others, so they want to retain as much control of themselves as they can. So Alice here, at least to how I read it, saw the phone as a handicap to her own independent actions. So she leaves it so she feels confident knowing she can do stuff on her own. Because with the phone, she then could be controlled by others' actions and whatnot. It's more of an independence thing, knowing she can do stuff on her own without the phone.
I can see that as reading into the situation of it. I just, to me, I thought it was very just cop out of I don't use it while running, and that's the end of it. There's no
I mean,
follow up to
it's a
John
bad
saying like it's a
explanation.
safety thing or her explaining what you just said or what Ryder said of like doesn't like the weight of it or anything like even just covering that she forgot. They give an explanation of some kind. I
I
just
mean,
didn't
you're
like
assuming
that it
she
was
forgot
dropped.
it.
Yeah, could have just forgot it.
Yeah. Well, the way I read the scene is that she intentionally left it so she can test her own resolve. Her explanation sucks, but it doesn't have to be a good explanation. But
Well,
that would be my answer since you kind of directed it towards me.
yeah, it's fine. I'm not swayed on my part of the reasoning.
Yeah, I the reason
What
I
was the reason?
That there's nothing following of an explanation to either John or saying from her own mind, like out loud, of a purpose for leaving the phone behind.
Well, it's the same reason why she didn't tell John about the Alzheimer's. Is she wanted to deal with her own problem. Uh, so if she divulged, well, I didn't bring it because I wanted to be self-dependent. But I think that just makes it very. If you're talking about writer's intent, I think that's what that would be. Um, I think that would actually hurt her a little bit as a character if she just like, this is what I was thinking this whole time. Because I don't, her character, I don't think would do that at this stage. She's at the teeter totter, codependent stage.
See, it's weird for me because saying it to John and then John to not act on it later, like there's nothing issued later of like she bringing up, I always need my phone on me, I always need this because even the middle of night thing looking for a phone, that was just an instance of that. It's not because of anything we see of anyone issuing, hey, you need something on you so we can know where you are in case you do get lost or a situation arrives. There's nothing of that. And after this conversation of, you know, you didn't have your phone on you, it's not a precaution later of anything of that regards. Or even, I guess, what you said, Crimson, of like her independence, it's not brought up as like, okay, let's do training wheels situation of like how far can you go with the deterioration? It's like how safe can this be? Like don't go this far away from the house or whatever have you of John's protection over her, which we see in the third doctor's neurologist appointment. And I don't want to say it damages his character in this scene by not doing something afterwards because of her, but I feel like an explanation could help strengthen some dialogue of John's reasoning with her of going over a reason why.
At this stage, um, John still sees her as a functioning person, right? He has no reason to doubt her answers to things yet. Even though he could probably see she's BSing him, he just wouldn't know exactly what she's BSing about. She's BSing about forgetting her phone. Is her explanation of bringing the phone to BS? Then there's certain aspects to what John could read into the scene. So I don't think that's that big of an issue at this point, especially with how condensed this film is. Anecdotal for me. My grandma currently has it, and like I said, it's pretty late, and she still does her walks by herself. It's one of the few things she actually can remember. Uh, so having some form of tracking isn't necessarily required at this stage for her because she hasn't been really lost at this point. Like the one time it's brought up, like, where were you? She's like, I went to the ice cream place or whatever. There's an explanation. She's not lost. So there's no reason for him at this point to doubt her her abilities yet. That's where I'm seeing it from.
Those aren't one and the same word. Those are two separate scenes, right? The pink
Yeah, there's two
berry.
separate scenes.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just talking about the progression of her mental state and her ability to go out on walks by her own. Because you were kind of implying, or you weren't sure if it was bad on him or not to make precautions after this. And my whole argument was it's not at that point yet.
Do you think the pink berry is at that point?
Then to some it probably could, to some others, or to some others, to some not. That one would be kind of an individual one. To me, if I was John and she forgot the meeting and went to an ice cream place, but she still found her way home and stuff, I would start getting worried, but I wouldn't immediately try to fix the issue because at this point, you want the person to feel like they're still semi normal, not coddled like a child.
There is the
But to some, that would be the stage of, yeah, we need to put you on a leash type deal. So
there
that'd be
is the also might be that, as you say, she could have just forgot her phone. It could be a sense of shame that she might be feeling, in the sense that she did forget all of that, and it's more of like John's gently pressuring her to start keeping her phone on her and stuff like that. But again, it's not at a point where he needs to enforce it. But the reason that she might be reacting so like flustered and kind of defiant on the whole aspect is just she might feel a sense of shame that she's reaching that point.
Yeah, that I can see that.
Um,
To go with the pink berry situation, though, hopefully that's in this act we touched on. But um, I think that's more of an issue of putting a leash of a sense on Alice, being the issue was over um, John's work.
like I said, that one's totally up to the person on that one. I could see someone seeing that as too far, not or not far. Enough.
that one's gonna change depending on how much the caretakers of the person with Alzheimer's how they're gonna view it.
So yeah, I could see that being the point where John would put a leash, but I could also see him seeing it as not far enough yet.
I
That
mean,
was up to interpretation, I
to
think.
show how worried that Alice truly is, at least following this incident, we see her go visit a home afterwards.
That's true.
So there is definitely a sense of that's why I'm bringing up the shame aspect of it, because I think that's kind of what leads her to investigate a home, because she realizes now that she is affecting the other people around her because she's forgetting stuff like her phone, or intentionally forgetting it. In either case, I mean, she's realizing how that's going to be a problem.
And then the line from the hand or not nurse, but caretaker, I guess, of the retirement home or not the Alzheimer's
Yeah,
treatment home, of saying like looking after your mom.
yeah. They just make an assumption that she's looking after her parents, which it hurts in like a good line delivery way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a good line to throw in there because it totally makes sense that someone would assume that.
Yeah.
So it totally makes sense.
Oh,
We'll go with writer.
all right. Um, I will. Uh, I quite like how much. Kind of sticking with the scene here of them, where Alice wishes that she had cancer instead. Um, and I think that to me is very like also a line very indicative of a character. I quite like the line because she spent her whole life studying the brain, and now that's the one thing that's you know abandoning her almost. So she'd rather have a more deadly disease in order to avert losing who she is, which I think speaks very much to the core of who she is as a character and as a functioning person within the story. Because it's a very uh, dark line that you saying I wish I had cancer. It's very
Heavy.
heavy. Um, and I I just found it a very very particularly powerful line within that scene because it really illustrates where how her feelings towards this specific disease, that she would prefer something that would kill her over something that's just going to take away who she is.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Yeah, good stuff in air quotes.
Yeah. Good stuff from the artistic standpoint.
Yes.
Um, yeah, in my notes I have the similar to that, which I touched on earlier. The I wish I had cancer line being such a heavy line with an immediate response from John, and not that movie open moment of like an audience like gasp situation, and just immediate from John. Uh, Showed how naturally quick this movie is to not give that to an audience, which reminded me of moments when we covered Before We Go.
Hold on. Before you go any further, what line specifically from John are you talking about? His reaction?
As yeah, as soon as she said, "I wish I had cancer,"
Don't say that.
there's no pause.
Yeah, it's
It's John
very
answering with, "Please
yeah
don't say that."
yeah. It lends into the realism aspect. Sorry, I you were gonna go to before we go.
Yeah, it reminded me of scenes like in Before We Go, of the realism of that, of just the conversations are just actual conversations, and they're not movie pause moments of like a situation of what Nick would say. Forget the lady's name, Alice, maybe, but um, Nick Vaughn, when he was like talking about first thing that came to mind is when he leaves the party, and he says, you know, okay, with life, in life, it's a you have to learn to. Oh God, I forget. You got to learn to not be okay with being okay, or you got to be okay with not being okay. That's it. Um, and then she responds back like emotionally, and there's not like a pause or a situation on how he feels. I felt the same kind of instance with this.
Yeah. Funny enough, this movie very much reminded me of Lost in Translation and Before We Go. Whenever you're leaning heavily into realism, one of the things that I learned in my own writing and in, over the course of this podcast is when you're leaning heavily into the realism of the moment, you slowly start removing like the quote unquote movie moments that you've been describing, which is the gasp or the look of surprise. Instead, you just keep the footage rolling like the scene is still playing out because in real life, quote unquote, there's no cameras there to catch your pause or to catch your gasp or in a more absurd reaction. Instead, it's going to be a more typically a more like human approach to the conversation where it's it's just it there's no break, as you put it. It's just going to go from one thing to the next. And I think for all my criticisms of all three of these films thus far, I think it's one of the things they do very very well. When they're leaning into the more realism aspect of a film, trying to make it feel very grounded.
I agree.
Also, uh, having it up in the background while we're covering the Pinkberry jog and the forgetting the phone jog are one in the same scene.
Yes.
Oh, see, I forgot.
Oh, oh, you guys didn't know that? That's why I was I was actually confused why you guys were treating them as independently.
I asked Crimson about it, and he said they're two separate.
Oh, I didn't. I guess I missed that conversation because I was doing notes skimming. But
Um, my point's still stand though. Um, what I said with the second one, it could be interpreted either way. Then
and then your point on just to recap, Springs. So the point you have with that is just there's nothing that comes out of the conversation, quote unquote, with the like the phone becoming your precaution afterwards.
Yes, having no explanation as to the reasoning of the phone, other than prior that she just says, "I forgot I have Alzheimer's," is kind of like a sly explanation to John, and not giving more of it. Uh, I see that in like to Alice, it's not that important whether she forgot or doesn't fully care. I think it's more she forgot because she cares about John. But John not doing something afterwards to continue with Alice of like a precaution, I think is slightly on John in that instance because he's caring after her. And what makes me say such is because it's such an importance to John about his job, and that this was a meeting with some kind of executive or someone from the clinic and her husband, which would have been big for him to attend and couldn't because he lost her for 2 hours. So I think it's not a they cut each other out with how much John cares about his career and how much he loves Alice to cancel each other out. But I think it's two opposite sides that are constantly pulling at John in this situation, which shows how passionate he is about what he wants to do without yelling at Alice over the situation, but does say remarks that I feel like could get to that way, like you know, like give an example, like don't wear like why aren't you wearing a fanny pack, like giving other examples to help. Um, but Alice is kind of just like waving him off. So I feel like it would get to that point with her attitude about it
Um,
because it doesn't seem a compromise is made.
I have a well. Here's the thing. I guess this is me inferring from the film, so I'm gonna run it past you. The next scene, she goes to visit the home, um, and then immediately in with also intercut with that scene is her writing the questions on her phone for herself. Is that not an implication? At least to me, that to me is that she took John's advice. She's now bringing her phone with her everywhere because now she's turning it into something very important. That's going to be very important for her to do every day. She has to answer these questions. So
It's true.
my I guess what I inferred was that she did listen to John and did start bringing her phone everywhere. And that's when then not only did she start bringing her phone everywhere with her, she's turning it into something extremely important that she wants on her at all times because now she wants to answer these questions every day.
Yes, but
It's not a direct
I don't know
connection.
why.
I'll openly
No,
admit
but I
that.
don't know why she wouldn't have her phone on other instances besides a jog, other than forgetfulness.
Well, there's a litany of
I mean,
reasons
that
why
was my explanation.
there's a litany of reasons why she wouldn't want her phone on the jog. But I admit the
On the
phone
jog,
doesn't.
yes, but
There's no
afterwards
definitive
it's
one
fine.
given in the film. But I don't know if you need a definitive one in the film. You can make the inference that it's Alzheimer's. You can make the inference that it's independence. You can make the inference that uh, John's at fault for not pressing her hard enough into wanting to caretake her. But you can also make the inference that it's just her wanting to be independent. There's a lot that goes into that specific, I guess, point about her not bringing her phone on a jog. But a lot of these inferences are plausible, even though we don't have a direct answer given.
Yeah, I guess with what you're saying of afterwards having scenes of her phone on her, the connection between not having it and then showing that she has it could infer to that. Um, for me, I think I would have needed a little more hard proof of actually like finishing a jog and like sitting at a park bench or something and taking her phone out.
Okay. So something you would want, I guess, in this version is you want just something really really small like that where she has her phone on her on a next jog.
Yeah,
Um,
doesn't have to be directly next scene, but like
yeah.
later in the film.
Mm, yeah, I can see why you'd want that. I don't think it's needed because of everything that we do get with it, but I understand why you want it. So I guess that's my full 2 cents on that subject, I suppose.
Right? Are we good with that, or do we want to probe that further? 'Cause I don't want to jump away if we're not done with that.
Oh, I think I'm good.
Right.
I am good as well. So if you have any closing statements, Crimson, because you were kind of quiet for the second half there, or if you want to jump to another point.
Yeah, I'll be jumping to another point because I'm still sticking with the independent thing. Uh, so I haven't said a lot of negatives to this so far, but I shall bring up one that I found during my facts research because I didn't know about this. She requests Rohypnol uh, from the doctor or whatever.
Yeah, the sleeping pills.
Yeah, those were banned in the U.S. in 1997. So that is something they would not have to even give her.
Counterpoint. What if she got it in the UK on one of her lecture tours? I have no
Well, this
idea.
Is
yeah.
there do we get to see the pill bottle actually say that is what she's prescribed?
I don't think we get a clear shot of what the pills are, but the doctor doesn't say no to it.
Okay, because it could fall into, I think, 2 slight elements of, 1, she could forget that it's banned, or 2, she where was I going with this?
Well, the doctor doesn't say, "Oh, well, that we don't have that anymore. That's banned." She's like, "Oh, that's pretty strong," and she's like, "I need it." So the doctor goes with it as if she does have it.
Was this the neurologist?
No, the female doc, the
Okay,
one she went to get the pills
sure.
for the video. Yeah.
Uh, really falls on if she knows that she's diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
And I know you said Alzheimer's, but for some reason my brain auto-corrected whatever you said to Helldivers.
Completely different.
I know. It's like,
Yeah.
she's diagnosed with Helldivers, and I'm like,
Slow down on the caffeine, bud.
yeah,
We
yeah, clearly. But like, I just find it funny that my brain said like, she's diagnosed with Helldivers, and I'm like, that's
she's just flushed with liberty.
Liberty.
That's why she has so much tea. Oh no. No, if because how the doctor, the neurologist acts or is around Alice of, testing her and asking questions, and she's like, "Oh, can we go back?" And he goes, "No need, we're all good," or things she says, and he just like nods, goes with it. I think if the prescriber here knows of it, it's just like a nod, like, "Oh, that is pretty strong," like going around, like, you do know what that is, and it's a strong one. Then actually not actually prescribing it or just telling her you're wrong.
Well, we would have had to have a scene of Alice being mad that she didn't get it, or realizing, "Oh, she didn't give me what I wanted." We would need that.
That ugh, I'm, again, that falls on to if she remembers that's what she asked for.
I mean, at this point, she's still cognitive. This is when she's making the video. She's aware she has errors, so she goes to a facility to check things out. She's still a functional person at this
Yeah,
point.
but it seems like the little things is what she forgets.
Yeah, but this is a big moment for her. This is
Yeah,
her future.
okay, to me that's 50-50. I'm not one way or the other because I can see both ends working.
Okay. Well, I'm going with the Rehypnol thing's an error because they have nothing that refutes that.
Um, yeah. Uh, Obviously she gets a hold of some, so or something of an equivalent strength or whatever. So
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Do we ever see the actual pill bottle dated?
Not
no,
enough to read it.
not enough to read it. The most we see that she's written the directions for her again on the pill bottle to take all with water. Uh,
Yeah, and that covers up pretty much the whole prescription on it to see.
yeah, I quite like that she's. I can't believe I'm gonna say this sentence. I quite like her setting up her suicide attempt. um, it's a very like the with the way she with the questions she's asking herself on the phone and the way she's leaving a recording for herself. It's I think it definitely comes from the point of like she has drawn her line of where there is going to be no return, where she's like the questions are integral to her identity, and if she can't answer them, her identity is gone. So she wants this to take effect, obviously, when she no longer has her, I guess, her identity intact, which is the intention of her plan here to nicely go to sleep.
I agree. It's a great addition, I think. Uh, Bill shows how intelligent she is at this stage to plan that far ahead for it. Try to make it nice and simple, so where the stage she would be at to require it could follow it. Well executed.
I have a history question, which
Okay.
made me look it up. when she's at the Alzheimer's home and the caregiver points out William and says he was part of the team that sent the first satellite into orbit. That's got to be talking of assumption the United States first satellite, correct?
See, not
Probably.
specific.
This
It's
wasn't
not
It was
specific.
Sputnik,
Sputnik.
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
first one, and that was the Russians.
yeah, that was Russians. Are you saying an old man Russian can't be in a U.S. care facility?
I don't know.
It could be. I'm not.
We never hear him talk, so I don't know.
The assumption is they're referring to it would be a safer assumption to assume that they're referring to the United States space program, but it wouldn't be too far fetched that someone from the collapse of the Soviet Union survived and eventually came out west to kind of make a new life and ended up with Alzheimer's. So,
I guess that just looks up a history question of who was named William on either side.
uh,
I mean, the name William could also just not be real. He doesn't have to be a
Could be that.
historical figure.
That is true.
and you also have to forget he might have come over through witness protection.
That
Yes,
also could be
that's
true.
also true.
So, uh, it's a cool little nod. Um,
Certainly not impossible that it's either U.S. or Russian, so I'm not too worried about it.
yeah. It's a minor question. I have a few minor follow up questions, but that's just because of my general interest in space.
So the title of the folder with the video in it was Butterfly, which at first it was kind of just a butterfly ring, which presumably to the audience is like, okay, she named it after the ring. Later we get some context with her and butterflies, which is I think in Act 3. But
uh,
I do like how they tied back to give some reasoning behind butterfly, other than it's just some random trinket in her drawer.
and then she obviously starts wearing a necklace, right? That's a butterfly as well, right?
Oh, was she?
She's
Yeah.
wearing a necklace. I think the butterfly ring you're talking about is a necklace.
Oh. Okay, yeah, I remember a butterfly necklace. I didn't remember a butterfly ring, so that's why I was running it. That's why I was bringing it up.
No, Ryder, I'm with you. I don't remember a ring.
Okay.
Okay, maybe it was necklace.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the I took it as she was wearing the butterfly Netflix necklace. To in a more subtle reminder of like what's going to be partly responsible for what's going to kill her or what she thinks is going to. Um, I understand that's totally me inferring. Um, but I always took that as she decided to wear it as a reminder that it's always an option for her, and then that also might trigger her looking at the folder at some point in the future if she's always wearing that as a necklace.
Then of course we find out she just stumbles on it in an accident. Later.
Yeah.
Sprinks, you got the point.
Probably do.
I don't think so. There's a lot left in the end.
The the beach house when she gets distracted with the photo album, it opens the first page and then it cuts to outside. I think was a really good transition.
Yeah, I agree.
To indicate the passage of time or just to
Yeah.
yeah. I on the beach house because there's a lot here that happens at the beach house. One of my favorite bits in it was John going out to sit with her at the ocean side. And then that transitions to them just kind of having fun bonding time inside the house. It really just highlights like their how wonderful their relationship is typically. You know, they're having good times right now and just trying to enjoy it.
And reminiscing on the past, showing that she still does remember stuff from 30 years ago. Uh, so we get to see a little bit of her current state at this point. I like the that she kind of brought down the mood by saying she you probably won't be yourself by the end of the year or in a year, and we did the kind of standard "don't say that," I
Yeah.
don't believe that type deal. But it was good.
Ruined his
She's
groove.
always been straight to the point.
Yeah.
Um, she doesn't hide behind anything.
Yeah. It's all the more reason as to why she's, while that transitions, like wanting to pressure her husband to take some time off with her so they can spend that time together. Is why she starts pressuring Lydia to go to college, even if it's not for what she wants, but what for Lydia wants.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Let's see, we get to see that she forgot where the bathroom was, which is kind of a big thing. Uh, I think this part's a bit too early on what we see her state at.
As far as progression is
Uh,
concerned.
yeah, because that's like last stage. That's pretty far to where you don't know where the bathroom is because that's something you do every day. Um, that's kind of once you lose the function to really be a person. But at this point, she's still very functional. So that one kind of stood out as a bit weird.
Hmm. I like the emotional impact of it. Um,
I do like that.
yeah, I'm trying to think if what they achieve with that in terms of like the objective writing overrides what the flaw is almost. Not necessarily that it isn't a flaw, that it would be too early in the stage. I'm just trying to kind of like, I guess, go at it from the more uh,
Pros
direct
and cons.
writing stage rather than like, I guess, with knowledge of how the disease works. Which, because that could definitely be a nitpick. I think you're on to something there. I think.
'Cause I like her reaction to it. I like John's supportive nature with it and his shock kind of what he just witnessed for standing there peeing herself. But I do feel like it's too early at where we see her at. Spranks.
I can see how that can be a nitpick. I am not agreeing with you. I think that is totally valid. Um, and it's not because what I know of Alzheimer's, it's not step by step by step of how much is lost. It's kind of wave of situations of what occur, and this is just like an instance where it's like she has good days and bad days. This was a bad day kind of situation.
I mean, that's true to a point, but you have your fundamentals, the
With
things
seeing,
that would be last.
yeah, with the
Those things
time
do
of what
happen.
we've seen of being lost while jogging for early on, which could be a month by now to the beach house. I think getting lost. The one thing I see the nitpick of being lost is that she opens the same door twice, and it's not like she's actually trying new places to find the bathroom and can't find it in time.
Well, she forgot she already looked at that door. Is what they're going for.
Yeah, that's the only thing I have a nitpick of. That seems too early on to forget that fast, rather than just playing with you're lost in a house you don't aren't familiar with, so check every door kind of thing.
Is it? Is it? So is this like a? I get the impression this is like a vacation home that they own, or like a cabin. Because this isn't their
Yeah,
house, right?
they have family photos. They have an album sitting. So yeah, this is just like a
A vacation.
vacation house. Yeah,
Okay.
somewhere she's certainly been to. I mean, she referenced the beach when they were younger. They don't really. I don't know if they say it's this beach though. Mhm. But no, I definitely stand with the bathroom things too soon in her progression because that is one of the last things that goes. Even with the whole wave thing brought the wave things typically um, just standard memory stuff events.
Like I said, I
Um,
want to keep the sort of emotional resonance of the scene. So if we were to change the scene to a different issue that she could have, what would you want to change it with? Because it would have to be somewhat severe in order to maintain that emotional impact. I'm curious as to what
something
you
that
would
would have
change it
been
with.
nice was she looks at the album, says it's her kids, but it's actually her and her mom or her and her sister or something. And then he's like, "No, that's not our kids. That's you as a kid." And that could be her some emotional moment for her.
Yeah. Okay. I can definitely see that working. And you don't have. You said you didn't have an issue, Spring. So you think you
I
came
think it's
across as
done
though
just
you
right.
what?
Yeah, the only thing I can see as a nitpick is opening the same door in less than a minute,
Yeah.
because that seems like a far deterioration in memory.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
but even still, I think it's okay.
Yeah, this is one I'm definitely like on the middle of between you two because I can definitely see it being a nitpick, and I also like it for what it still achieves. And I'm not sure I could pick one over the other, to be honest.
Let's see. Writer, I think you can throw something out.
Oh, sure. I like the. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. I like that Lydia asks, uh, um, hey, fuck it, Alice, what it's like, because Lydia is also more direct, kind of in the vein of Alice, the way Alice is. She's very direct about how her feelings are, and uh, I like that Lydia is the one to ask because she. That seems like more of a character trait for Lydia to be the one to ask the Alice about the how she feels about what Alzheimer's is doing to her.
Frank, what do you have to say with that?
Um,
I always feel like I'm the one that jumps in. You go
on
first.
processing, I guess it's appropriate. Lydia asked.
Okay. Can you say it again?
Me?
Writer.
The
Yeah.
question? Okay. I really quite like that. Lydia is the one to ask Alice about how the Alzheimer's is affecting her because I think it's very in character for Lydia to do that. I derive that it's a character trait she inherited from her mom because Lydia is very direct on the emotional standpoint, doesn't like to waste time uh, with emotions and stuff like that. So for me, it makes a lot of sense that Lydia would be the one to ask that question, and I think it's a very powerful scene that the two of them share.
I agree. I feel like if we had a tier list on kids that would ask that question, Lydia, or just people around her, it would be Lydia, Tom, John, and probably Anna. Well, uh, no, maybe I'll put John
Anna would
over
be at the
Tom.
bottom.
Yeah, Anna would be the one.
Yeah, I think if I were making a tier list, I actually think Tom and John would be on the same level because I the way they interact in the film speaks to me as they're very much very similar, which is why um in the background you can always see John and Tom always talking, or why Tom always looks to his dad when he needs something explained. They have a lot of character actions between in character interactions between the two of them that we're not necessarily privy to as an audience, but we can still see that it's there.
Sprinks, you got a point to jump to.
Um, yeah, I'll jump to the one joke I found in this whole film
All right.
of John telling Alice read something a little easier, and she says "Cat in the Hat" to Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, yeah. I knew you would like that.
I don't know if "like's" the right word, but it's the one like
You
meta
like
joke
it.
I found. I
Let me
guess
think
another
about
one
one.
could be over that Lydia, so Kirsten Stewart, is trying to get into drama, where many comments of the internet out there say that she's not a great actress.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I would.
Apparently, Julian Moore met Kristen Stewart when she was 12 on a project. I don't remember what project it was. I found that in my fact finding, but some connection they had before this.
Oh, cool.
Ryder, you're about to say something?
Uh, yeah, I was gonna say I'd probably disagree with them if they. Granted, if they're just going based off of Twilight, I'd understand why they walk away with that them thinking that Kristen Stewart's not a great actress.
I know it's like they haven't seen Zathura or anything top class.
Yeah, or Adventureland, or other projects.
Charlie's Angels. Yeah. Uh, what's the super something? I don't remember.
Don't know. I know the new one is supposed to be really good. I haven't seen that. Came out uh the like wrestler one with like the trouble in
Oh,
life situation.
with Zendaya, that one?
No, that's Challengers.
No.
Different movie. No, it's like Love Blood or something, and it's got Ed Harris.
We got the play in this act, and her performance was definitely a theatrical performance.
That definitely
Uh,
played up the I'm pretending to act in a theater kind of thing.
yes,
Uh,
yes, definitely got those vibes.
I always find it funny when like when good actors have to dumb down their acting skill for like a performance in universe.
Like in Ragnarok,
Yeah, a little bit.
and yeah, Springtree was different.
no, the movie was Love Lives Bleeding.
Oh, right. Yeah, not familiar with that one. Yeah, the post performance, post play was a good scene. This I think was the best interaction between Anna and Lydia, and it wasn't a direct interaction either. Where Anna's the one that pointed out she's your daughter. Uh, it wasn't some snide remark towards her. It was kind of like a sentimental moment for her. Sentimental.
Yeah. They like it's still one of the things I do like about the show is you still get the sense that Anna and Lydia love each other even if they don't get along, you know?
Yeah,
Um, and you definitely get a lot out of the sense that they were when they're eating together too, and John has to walk off to take a phone call, and uh, they start bickering over the scheduling conflict, which I think we touched on earlier.
we did. Yeah. About how they both approach things differently. Lydia's trying to keep Alice as normal as possible, while Anna is trying to
Well,
uh, change things for Alice to
you know,
fit her new lifestyle.
yeah, which I think is interesting, right? Because Alice is the one who voluntarily is like, "Oh, my phone will tell me, so give me the date, and I'll put it in the phone, and I don't have to remember it." And then Lydia agrees, and then Anna's the one that jumps in and says no, which I guess it adds more to their dynamic, I suppose, that I quite like.
Yeah, because it shows more of Anna's logical side of things. Because she brings up, well, it's not going to matter if we're just going to pick her up anyways. Which true, but she would also need to be ready to go.
Technically true,
So
however, you know,
some other elements in play
uh,
during the play.
Yeah, I guess this is where I'll bring up the camera blur
Camera. Yeah.
of it's very blurry on every like you can hear the conversation fine and like the focus and everything. So to play that it's connected to Alice, the camera is connected to Alice, shows that she is hearing things fine. It's not a hearing issue, of course, or distraction, but she doesn't get herself into the moment until she's focused on something, which is when it clears up and focuses on Lydia when she gets there. Um, and funny enough, the use of the camera blur being a perspective of how Alice sees the world or situations at hand with her Alzheimer's reminded me of what we just covered with Fundamentals of Caring, where the camera was connected to Ben's character with how it acted.
This one's a lot more apparent and heavy-handed, though.
Oh,
That
for
one.
use of blur, yeah.
Well, I
There
mean,
are instances
blur
where
and handheld to
handheld,
emphasize
yeah.
the scene. Yeah, they toy with that as well.
yeah. I had a question for you, Springs. I noticed, or at least I thought they were using handheld a lot more when they're trying to indicate the more like the spiraling state of Alice. And I don't know if that's the pattern that was going on. But I figured I'd ask you since that's your more
I
your
don't
field.
yeah, I there's definitely elements to use that, and I don't know if that's into more distress spiraling because it was definitely used when she, peed her pants and got lost in the house, um, to show more of I don't know an unstable situation at hand. But I don't know that wasn't just times of Alzheimer situations that also happen with family moments. So, like when Anna and Lydia are bickering at one another over the table, the quick cuts between that I think are handheld usage, and but that's not an instance of forgetfulness.
Yeah, that's more to increase, like, I guess, familial strife, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it can't be both. I'm not saying the handheld usage can only be connected to one thing throughout a film, but I don't.
Well, I think it's connected to her stress level.
That could be. I think. Yeah.
That's
Well,
how I
yeah, I mean, her kids are bickering, and she would have a difficult time to follow the conversation just because of the state she's in. I can definitely see that playing into it.
yeah, that's how I saw the handheld use in this. How stressed she was, because there's moments where you get the handheld plus the focus, and that's usually tied into she's a little confused about the situation she's in. Uh, and it goes hand in hand because the part where she's walking up to Lydia, I think was handheld, while it was super out of focus, following her from the back. And I guess there's more on that scene because it's popped in my mind. I liked John's reaction to the Lydia bit, where she didn't remember Lydia. We just get a
Oh,
quick shot of his reaction.
oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
he
yeah.
took it in.
Yeah,
Uh,
I also, yeah, since we're on that, I also really like that scene as well. Mostly because I think, to kind of extend on what you said, the quick interaction between Anna and Lydia, like sharing the moment together, but the they have enough foresight, I guess, to show John's reaction, who is taking the conversation and realizing, how much of, is left, I suppose would be the way to put it.
you go on host.
Okay.
Ooh, host power.
I know. I got shut down. I got shut down hard. So it's a very, very small thing. I really like the interaction between. This is gonna be a sequence of events, but I really like the John not paying full attention to Alice while he's working, and Alice can't get through like thicker books anymore, so she needs to try to start reading like lighter stuff. And that's what eventually prompts her to go downstairs and look for plays in Lydia's room. And I like that connection of how all of that leads to not only their confrontation, but the payoff of their confrontation when they both apologize. And Lydia asks, what's it like to, be experiencing Alzheimer's? And there's a lot to unpack there that I really, really like. The I like Jean is still trying to maintain a semblance of a. He's still working, like he's still throwing himself at work, and because it probably is an escape for him from having to deal with Alice, and obviously as it will come up later, he can't take a sabbatical because they can't afford to. Um, and then that leads into Alice reading Lydia's journal or her diary, what have you. Her notes are there that she goes through it. Um, and I like that Lydia, being kind of the black sheep, one of the group, she's does get angry about it and snap at her mom, but immediately apologizes for it the next day. And there's a lot of good relationship stuff that happens within that small sequence of events that I really appreciated.
Certainly. What do you think, Springs? How'd you feel about it?
Yeah, no, I can agree.
Sound like you're on the fence though. Let's pick at
No,
your brain.
no, I agree. I'm not 50-50. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like 60-40. What's the 40?
In all honesty, the 40 is the distractions in my life happening right now during recording.
Ah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I like it. She does play it off once she's confronted that she didn't remember going through the journal. In the moment, though, she had to have known it was her journal when she read it, right? So it was kind of an intentional act initially.
Yeah, but I think
Right?
I think it's just something that she could read, or that she'd never fully intended to talk to Lydia about either case.
True, but she did have intentionally read the journal and not the plays. It wasn't just oh, this random book. Let me read it. She read the cover of it before she opened it and stuff. She knew what it was. But you could read into Alice in several ways for doing that. She wants to know more about her daughter because she's forgetting about her daughter, uh, or she just wants to know her reasoning with the her play stuff because she still remembers that at least,
Mhm.
and she still remembers not liking it. So maybe she's looking for more ammunition for her points. I don't know. There's some you can
It could also be that
speculate with.
she knew it was Lydia's and then forgot halfway through.
That could be true as well. But I did like how Lydia reacted because it makes sense. You'd freak out over that, but it would also make sense that you would understand the situation later and reconcile.
Again, Lydia's probably my pick for favorite character outside of John and Alice.
Outside of half the
Yeah,
cast,
instead of half the
she's
cast,
my
you're right.
favorite.
Uh, Excluding the two leads being John and Alice, I think Lydia is my favorite side character.
All right, see, Sprinks. How you know,
Um,
Zippin? You got left, I think. On that.
I know that pregnant people aren't allowed to have some foods and drinks um, because of the growth of a child. However, I didn't know sushi and hot dogs were on that list.
I
Yeah, I
legitimately
never heard of that.
No, I actually legitimately think they're just putting her on a stricter diet because they know she's positive for Alzheimer's. I took that as they've combined both, so they're trying to like reduce uh her own uh risk.
Oh, interesting.
Uh, yeah, I don't
Are there
know.
foods to progress diseases?
Yes,
I
There
mean,
you
absolutely.
go.
So
there's chemicals and
yeah,
foods
there's
that can
there's
progress
chemicals in
things.
foods and stuff like that, which is why when you go grocery shopping, I highly recommend getting organic because while those still have some chemicals, it's far less than what you would normally find on the shelf, and they deeply infect your brain over a lifetime of eating and consuming it. Um, so I that the reason I took it that way as well is not only is it helping with the pregnancy, but it will also be helping her in the future, potentially offsetting her Alzheimer's by more years by eating healthier because the phrase rings true, you are what you eat.
Yeah,
Like, we all expect Crimson to wake up as a cheese bread one day, or mac and cheese, but
Cheese bread. That's a new one.
that's a new one. Cheese bread.
I don't know what cheese bread is.
It's bread with cheese on it, like
Literal,
breadsticks, but
literal
not
sense.
breadsticks.
Got it.
Yes, it is literal.
um, anyway, that's how I interpreted that. But I definitely can see why uh, people would just assume it's the pregnancy thing. Um, I guess I just inferred a lot more to it because she's the one that tested positive, and Anna, from what little is characterized of her, I assume she would be a stickler enough to start trying to eat much healthier to try and, if not prevent Alzheimer's, delay it as much as possible.
Yeah, she seems like someone that would do that. Whether or not that's what was happening, I don't know. I kind of saw it as the pregnancy thing, like Sprinks. I don't know. I'm running thin on this act. When Alice and John were in the bed reminiscing, uh, we hear that Alice was liberated from Columbia or whatever, UCLA. So that got confirmed that she got dropped at that point, which was nice because up to that point, we didn't really know if she was still there or not. Because all we got from Eric was he's going to tell everyone and then we'll see. But we never really got to see if things happened or not.
Yeah. Presumably she
And we
didn't
don't know
get
how much
fired.
time passed.
Yeah.
But
Presumably she didn't get fired that day, obviously, and they did let her keep her job as much as possible, but obviously there reaches a point where she just can't functionally
yeah.
work as much.
Mhm. And these students are paying thousands of dollars. for this education.
Yep. Which is why I guess I really like that scene where her supervisor comes to talk to her about her, her performance and trying to just, again, not really taking her BS because it's clearly they have some they know each other very well. So he knows something is wrong because obviously Alice has been probably one of his best teachers for the longest time, and now he's getting all these reviews from students and stuff like that.
And I like how she tried to work around every question because she really didn't want to sacrifice her position there.
Yeah,
And yeah, yeah, you're right. He knew her well enough to read that that's what she was doing, and kept probing.
yeah. And then obviously he feels devastated at the end of it, which I think is a very human reaction to come from him. He's such a minor character. Um,
Yeah, yeah. For how short of a segment that was, it was well done, I believe. I guess final calls for this act.
Look at my notes. I got nothing else.
yeah, I'm skimming. I'm skimming. Uh, we have her using kind of her situation with Alzheimer's to try and pressure Lydia a little bit to go into college. I actually quite like that scene, is because Alice is not really ashamed that that's exactly what she's doing, but she clearly just wants the best for her daughter. Um,
Yeah, she wants to have a backup plan before she's gone, as you put it.
yeah, which is that's a message that's personally resonated with me because I've had some of the elders in my life uh, tell me to get my shit together before, and not a very kind way, as Alice put it. Um, so I don't know. I guess it struck a chord with me.
It was a good little addition. Every addition's a good addition in this. It's a
Surprisingly,
both thing.
yeah.
A lot of the
Yeah,
additions in this are good
yeah.
additions.
If you haven't picked up on it, I only have nitpicks for the film.
Yeah, and there's not many gouges, but there will be a couple in the third act I'll be pointing out. All right, I don't think I have anything else either in this act, so we'll go to the last act. Obviously, after Lydia's play, to the end. Boom, shockers. Let's see, Spinks went last time first. So, Ryder, you go.
Do you want to touch on favorite shots?
Oh, is that?
This is
I
the
guess
time.
we can open with that. Sure. Your favorite shot, Spring.
My favorite shot is timestamp 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 20 seconds. And writer, you have an example of it over on visual sides. Um,
I do
it's
indeed.
a shot indicating of a park where I'd say maybe 70 to 80% of the trees are bare bones and only a couple have leaves on them. A jogger is running past, and there's a river in the background. And to me, this one shot implemented the character of Alice to me, of showing a jogger of something she used to do, a body of water for how much she loves the ocean, and the trees to implement how much memory she has left.
Oh, like the lack of leaves indicating how much she's
Yeah,
lost.
to me, it was a shot of familiarity of who Alice is.
That could
For
be
those who are gonna look
better.
this for those who are gonna look this up in the film, it's literally the scene before the last one in the film.
Yeah, it's right before uh, Lydia and Alice are sitting on a bench talking about like going home after a walk,
Yeah.
which to me was like that was such a quick and smaller scene. What's the main use of it? And for my takeaway, it was the use of getting this shot of nature.
I think what would have strengthened it, if that is indeed what they were going for, was if the jogger ran from right to left, so left to right, starting at the full trees and then running towards nothing. I think that would sell the point you're selling here a bit stronger.
Could
Uh,
could work that way.
a
I
good
also see it as
takeaway.
running in the trees that are bare. is something that's lost in what she used to do because we don't see her jog again. So it's like a past memory of what she did, and it cuts before getting the jogger to the trees with leaves.
What would that signify then?
Or familiarity of past events because the deterioration of Alzheimer's can pick uh, little things that pop in here and there of your past of what you remember, um, to the point of literally becoming a past age of oneself of like for an hour you think you're an 8-year old because you're stuck in a memory. So I think because showing that as like events she used to do of jogging but she doesn't do is a memory of that that's deteriorated, and like a little pop in memory of like, oh, I remember one time I jogged, this happened, and then not remembering it for could be forever. Or
Yeah. Let's see. Ryder, you thought you could have guessed what my shot was. What shot do you think that was?
My guess for your shot was the over the head shot from Alice's point of view with uh, John, Anna, and Tom in the background but blurred out.
On the money.
Yep.
That is exactly what it is.
That is my second favorite shot of the film.
Yeah, it's a great shot, and it really tells you where they are at as a collective. Obviously, Alice is out of it. She's completely out of focus there, or well, they are, um, and they're at the point where they're not afraid to talk around her in front of her. They know at this point anything they say won't affect her.
Mhm.
She's that far gone. Really sets the stage of where they're at. Just I really like that.
I agree. It's a good shot.
mm, I
Uh, oh,
well, interesting. This plays into something way in the past. Sinister and I had a debate over. Um, I do like the shot. However, your definition of what you just explained sounded more like a scene.
I mean, sure. I mean, the shot goes hand in hand with the scene. I have the information provided by the scene to give context to what the visual is. Scene in isolation of her in focus while them in the blurry background is still compositionally well done. So you want to take it that analytically.
And also, while the shot's being maintained, you still hear the characters talking.
That's why he's describing it as a scene and not a shot. He's talking a freeze frame would be a shot.
Oh well,
So yes, the composition
that negates
is
the
still
jogger
good.
point then, if that's what the scene is.
Jogger in
That's
motion, yes.
that's true. All right. I was going to start with writer, then we did that. So writer, you can go.
But okay. Um, I am gonna go to. I'm gonna jump to the rehearsal with Lydia because we see that Lydia kind of takes a bit of a back seat over the course of this act for a while, but she still maintains a constant presence because she's not with the family. But you can see how she's constantly video chatting her mom, and I like that. This is a very big thing for me. I really love that Alice does listen to Lydia when getting advice about her speech. Because initially during the rehearsal we hear it's very scientifically minded, and which is not match up with the speech at all. So it's a subtle way to show that Alice still took Lydia's advice and she reworked her speech to make it more to make it less scientific and more emotionally resonant. And it's details that I think that really elevate the the relationship between Lydia and Alice uh, into something that was I think is very beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. The only potential issue I'd have with it is she did remember the critique. Uh, it's not like Lydia was there helping her the whole time. Lydia just dipped, and Alice remembered the comments and then began to write.
Well, I mean, she probably could have just started right in that moment after they hung up.
Yeah,
So
but she could forget halfway through why she was writing something that didn't feel like her. because the scientific aspect is what she felt was her.
Yeah. And it would be interesting to see more of that, like if she left a quick note for herself as to why she was rewriting it. Um, but yeah, I can definitely see this as a potential issue. But I do like the payoff of their relationship in that regard.
Yes. Drinks. Yeah. Imagine you got something since we just started the act.
I guess to slightly go off of what Ryder just pitched, the uh, one of the calls with Lydia resulted in a Hollywood hang-up,
Hollywood
which
Hangover.
yeah, when they click off the phone without saying goodbye, happens in movies all the time.
That's true. Hollywood Hangout. I'm just gonna remember the phrase. That's pretty funny.
I believe that's what it's called.
Could be.
I can
I've
believe it.
never heard it before, but
Oh, we're at a meet cute situation again. Okay.
Well, I mean, this one I definitely believe exists.
yeah,
So
no, I definitely I believe this one
not the
exists.
same
Yeah.
scenario. Uh, but yeah, I mean, he was getting a little flustered. Uh,
And I mean, I get
Alice
it.
wouldn't remember it anyways.
Yeah, and I think what I also really like about that, at least the first scene where she's talking about using the highlighter as a tool to so she doesn't reread the same line over and over again. It shows that she's constantly developing methods to try and overcome like Alzheimer's as much as possible. And you can definitely see the clear frustration in her that she like did all this work and now it's worthless in the eyes of not worthless, but her daughter didn't like it. You know.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
that goes into a question I have. Did Alice rewrite it?
We saw the start of her speech and the end of her speech, and it wasn't the same as what she said.
My assumption is yes, she did rewrite it.
Okay,
I
good.
don't have enough reason to assume she didn't. Other than what Crimson pointed out is surprised she remembered the critique, which is definitely a nitpick you can staple on. But I don't think there's enough reason to assume that someone else rewrote the speech.
Didn't rewrite it. Oh,
Huh?
oh, someone else. Sorry. Okay, got me slightly confused. Someone else rewrote it for her. Got it.
Yeah.
Um, no, I'm on the side that she definitely did rewrite it. Otherwise, Lydia didn't listen to a word she said about the speech having anything to do with Allison.
Yeah. We hear the kind of scientific bit that she was giving. So that's why I assumed she rewrote it. Because that scientific bit I was listening for when she was giving the actual speech, and there never was an opportunity for it to be said, and there would never. It didn't seem like it was there.
Yeah. Now, Ryder, you brought it up earlier with John, I believe. Yeah, John. You said there was a subversion of him always taking phone calls. You thought that was like cheating or possible cheating. I had a subversion here where Alice gives her speech and she drops her papers, and I thought that would be something, and nothing came of it. I honestly thought she'd like finish a page flip, and it would be a complete like the sentence wouldn't make sense.
I had the same thoughts.
Uh,
The only thing we can go off of is she numbered the pages, I guess.
yeah. I also wrote down my subversion. I wrote down "Good job, you weren't Ryan Johnson" in my notes, as I do. Um, and my nitpick for the scene is I have no idea why her papers would fall over because most podiums have like you know
A little bar at the
yeah,
bottom.
have a little bar at the bottom. And I know they fly off to the side, but she didn't move anything so drastically that they would just fly off. So I just went, man, gust of wind in this room, really powerful.
Okay,
Oh, it's the
for
ghost
the
of her former self.
for in-world situation usage, what is the usage of it outside?
What do you mean?
Why
Like,
would
what's the
writers put it
purpose
in?
of it having being in the film?
Oh, why they would fall over?
Yeah,
Why
why
would
her
the writers
papers
add that scene in?
Oh,
if it had
That
it's to
is
show the triumph.
stressed?
It's supposed to help build up to the triumph because they're intentionally baiting you with the subversion with it.
Seems to go too smooth.
Writers do be like that. They are intentionally baiting you with a subversion.
Yes, yes, that no, I get that, and it's like nothing came of it for a reasonable situation. but the situation given, I feel like it went way too smooth to be just nothing, which is why I took it as just like a situation of stress or nerves at the moment, but didn't seem very heavy or needed in my eyes. Because Crimson, with what you brought up, they were numbered. Just seeing her like go to page 1 to 3, and then she goes oops, and then goes to 2, or doesn't even say anything and like covers herself with it, I think would help with that, without having to break with what Ryder just said of her being successful with her speech.
I agree. I also had it written down that kind of felt a little hollow because there was nothing of it directly of it. We get the byproduct of her making the joke and the crowd being with her there, so it does build up the audience's engagement with her speech. So that there is a byproduct. It's just not a direct one.
Uh,
But I agree that could be a good addition, but I don't think it's necessarily required.
yeah. I have the other aspect of it, which is because she doesn't read from her speech lines all that much. Uh, my one of the this is totally headcanon, and I don't even think it's real, but it could be inferred, I think, that she just winged it after she lost her place and just went along with whatever came into her head first.
Um, I
I
mean,
don't
I
think that's
guess
what
you
happened,
could
mind you.
infer that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think that's what happened, mind you. But I definitely can see a bit of inference for that, and that she ended up following Lydia's advice on incidentally because she had lost her place and just kind of winged it and gave a better speech that way. There's nothing supporting it. Uh, I just I saw it as a potential takeaway.
uh, gonna say yes. We got a little bit for Tom here. I think this is what raises Tom to be a little bit more than what he has been as kind of just a background guy. He takes her there, so he has some initiative there. We also hear later that he was willing to help her, but John doesn't think that's feasible for him. But he takes her there, and we get shots of him being very emotional with the words she's saying. Something we don't really get much from Anna in the crowd. It's very much like Tom focused whenever it's looking to the family to this speech, which I think bolsters him to being a bit more necessary to the story than before.
Yeah, and because I view, like I said, I view Tom and John as very similar characters. I kind of view like Tom is standing in there for John because John's obviously at work, and I kind of they would have a very similar reaction, and we can see that because they have a similar reaction, we can assume John's reaction would have been very close to that as well, because of how quote unquote similar they are as characters. So there's a bunch of reading, I suppose, for Tom being there. Anna's there because Anna's ever supported him, and Lydia's on the other side of the country. So
Yeah. What are your thoughts on all that, Sprinks?
Uh, it's been discussed many times, and I don't think I agree with the two of you of how much credit Tom's getting of being like John, like he can be like John, but I don't see him one and the same.
no,
Or
I didn't. Yeah, sorry, you
I
finished with
just
that.
don't see Tom as that big of a character.
I agree. He's not that big, uh, but I think this betters him.
Yeah, I'm in agreement that he's not a big character. Um,
Okay, I just had to get that off my chest. It just sounds like him and John are one and the same, and I
no,
just
I did not say that at all. I said there's a lot of similarities between them, and the film has what little we have had with Tom up until this point has reinforced their similarities.
well, thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, of course. We asked the deep questions here, and a lot of them just happen to be clarifications.
Let's see. Oh, the potato and lemon thing was in this act. Whoopsies. All right, there you go. That's from the previous one. Going through my notes. An issue I had
Oh, it
with.
might be the one I have.
Okay, is it regarding the phone?
Yep.
Maybe you can take it away then. We'll see what you got.
Hey, if you're looking for a phone, call it.
Yeah,
Just call the phone.
I had two issues. Yeah, we're gonna have to assume it was dead.
wasn't it?
We
Is
don't
it broken or scratched
It
up?
looked broken
look
and cracked, right?
damage. Yeah, that could have been happen. That could have happened when she searched through the drawers and it just broke or something. I don't know, but it did look damaged.
What
But
do you
yeah,
mean it didn't have
I
it?
wrote that the night of when she's looking for it. He's like, "We'll look at it for the morning," and she's like, "Just help me." I'm like, okay, call it. Easy, easy done. Uh, the other issue I had with the phone was we find out a month later that it was in that drawer for a month. And John didn't find it. He could have been away. So maybe he didn't see it. The caretaker could have found it and be like, why is this here? But she might not know the scenario. But Alice, I think, would have gone through that drawer at some point in the month. That is something Alzheimer's patients do all the time. And they wander and look through everything. They do that all the time. And a whole month in the kitchen absolutely would have been found by somebody.
I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely like the intention behind the scene, but I think that's something that they would need to have fixed in order to get their payoff of the time skip.
Put it in a different spot.
Yeah,
Easy,
yeah,
easy
put it in a
solution.
different spot. I know the reason that they're doing the phone is because the phone is very integral to her daily life and having to answer these questions correctly. But because it's her phone, it would prompt her to look or constantly wander to look for something that she's lost, even if she's forgotten what she's lost.
I heard sighs from Sprinks.
Well,
Contemplation sighs.
if the phone's broken,
Mhm.
well, no,
Well, it's cracked and we see it
never
turn
mind.
on, right?
Never mind. I don't
Does
remember
it
it
turn
turning
on?
on.
I don't think it turns on.
Okay.
Never mind. It's the fact that John found it.
What was the point you were gonna make?
I was gonna make if someone else found it and was just like, "Oh, like, mom, here's your phone." She goes, "Oh, that's where I put it," and remembers the night that was a month ago. Could be unexplained that they did find it earlier, but since it was broken, they just put it away somewhere because it doesn't work. But the fact that John's surprised when he finds it plays that they never did find it.
Yeah. That there's definitely a lot they could have played around with that to kind of mend the scene a little bit. Uh, like, maybe Alice was the one that originally broke it and she just forgot about it. That sort of thing.
Yeah, and how do you guys feel about this month being gone? I wish they didn't do that jump.
Oh,
I appreciate that there is a jump, but the fact that her phone is her anchor. It's what's keeping her cognitively stable, playing her games, answering her questions, and we get a month of her not losing that. We just get a month jump of her. Oh, she's lost a semblance of herself because she didn't have it for a month. I would love to have seen something, a stepping stone,
Now,
but
what if?
we skip that.
Now, what if? And hear me out here. She was on pause until she found it. Hence, why she just assumed it was last night. Like, she was mentally on a pause almost.
I don't know about that. Month kind of a long time to be on pause. It's more likely she just remembers it as if it was a day. Sprinks, you were making noises when I made my statement.
I was making noises. Oh, well, I
Yeah,
think the month jump is awesome.
yeah, but what about what I said?
Well, that just goes with the phone. It's the fact that John finds it and is surprised by
Um,
the nitpick of the phone.
if I'm
I'm
gonna
kind
just
of because it's still the same phone later, right? We see her with a phone again, and it's the same phone. It's not like she got one, like it's not a new phone, so it's like they couldn't find it, so they got her a new one. Because that could clear it all up. That she had a phone that whole month. Then it just wasn't her original one.
well, the thing is, I think it is. She does have a new phone because we see that once we get the phone again, it's not cracked or anything, so it's not like she's using the same one. So you could be that, but I get what you're saying, Crimson. Though that it would be, I guess, more obvious that she would have needed the phone earlier than when they find it.
And then obviously over a course of a month. at her stage, a phone is needed for just checking in everything. Like they had the talk at the beach house dinner of how technology is helping her keep dates and how she her herself says like I use this for help. So having it without a month and then just being like, "Oh, here it is broken." It seems a problem. The fact that writer you do say, I mean, she has a phone later and it's not cracked. That phone she has later could have been achieved within that month or acquired. I said achieved, acquired.
It's possible. I would need to look at the phone again if it's the same, because the broken one, what, had like a pink case or something with it.
Yeah,
Uh,
reddish pink.
don't remember what the later phone looked like, because it could be the same phone. They just fixed the screen.
Could be, or
Possible.
she just kept the
Possible.
case and got a new phone.
Yeah.
I don't know the color of the case, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah. It's I don't know. They had so much significance piled onto this phone, and you're right. We don't know if she didn't have a phone for a whole month or if she had a replacement phone during that period. But we do see some uh, her her mental state gets worsened by that month, and we don't get to see the steps because we've been following her all the way up to this point.
I to kind of go back to the original point. I really like the time jump. I itself, it's just there's a lot of issues that surround, I guess, the phone that need clarification. I guess for to make it stick the landing a bit more.
Yeah.
Um, skimming through the film in the background
Mhm.
here, she never uses a phone again,
Okay. Safe to assume she didn't have a phone for a month then.
I
or
suppose
any
to
time after that.
anytime after that. Yeah, we kind of see that the phone's kind of not as helpful anymore before that point. A little bit after the conversation about John not wanting to take a sabbatical. We see her answering the questions, but like she's spelling everything wrong. Like her,
Yeah, but she's still getting them right.
yeah,
She's still getting Anna. She's
she's
still
still
getting October.
she's
She's
not getting
spelling them
Anna.
wrong.
She's getting Anne. So they're
She did the
close.
and then
Yeah,
she did and then swapped it to Anna, didn't she?
no, it's just Anne. So like
Okay.
they're in the ballpark, but they're not. They're technically right. Like she's throwing darts at a board and just missing the bullseye. You know.
I feel like I remember her typing and then deleting the E and putting an A.
Could be. We know she spells October incorrectly. So
But yeah, that's for certain.
and Anna would still be spelled incorrectly because it was only A instead of, and now it's with two N's. So it still would be incorrectly spelled, but
But yeah, it's still keeping her grounded to a sense. It's just I don't know.
the deterioration is there. You know, uh, we kind of skipped over. I quite like the John not wanting to take a sabbatical scene, where they have that back and forth, where she's like accuses him of not wanting to take a sabbatical with her, and then
Yeah,
they just kind of falls quiet. Um,
yeah.
and
That's a really good scene for me because that's the scene I was kind of referencing earlier, where someone who has no connection to Alzheimer's would see him as kind of a jerk there.
yeah.
Uh, but this is a very realistic take. This is something you can absolutely tell that they did research for. 'Cause, it's hard for you to be around someone with Alzheimer's. It's emotionally draining, always getting forgotten and stuff, and not just that, but you getting new memories of them in this state. That's probably the hardest thing.
Mhm.
Is you start creating these new memories with them in in a negative light than just all the good stuff before it.
Yeah, and then more. Another thing that goes into the scene is he talks about like that he can't, even if he wanted to take that time financially, he can't do it, which is
Yeah,
also realistic in the sense that the world doesn't stop spinning because you know the person you love is slowly losing who they are.
and he's
It's
still willing to take her.
yeah, uh, And it's again, I also happen to really, really love the scene. It definitely it makes John a very, very complicated character in like the sense of there's only so much he could do, you know?
All right, Brinks, thoughts on the scene? Big scene.
Um, again, just believable of John and trying to do what's best for both himself and for Alice. And it's not quite at the breaking point until it does become that, where he goes off on his own. Um, but it's in John's character to try to find compromises that don't seem to always match. Um, not best, but not match. I guess ideally or realistic means. Um, but he's definitely patient with Alice, which is great. And
It speaks to how like great their relationship is, even now when it's being strained.
Yeah, yeah, he's very patient in all of it. Good. Glad every because they could have done a really like drama heavy third act here, where everyone's getting really short with Alice, because that ground down emotionally. But they added a lot of nuance to it. Everyone was very leveled, uh, taking it very rationally. Good. I
I
mean, even the emotional people like Lydia, she she was very level with Alice at the final parts where she was reading from her play or
yeah,
whatever she was reading.
yeah, I agree. One of the things I guess I really appreciated, kind of jumping off of the nuance aspect of it, because I think you could write John off as uncaring, but there the scene that for me would like make me reject that opinion out of hand would be the scene where he breaks down with his daughter, Lydia.
Yeah,
Um,
you're a better man than I am.
yeah, and then he starts crying because he feels horrible, and it's I it's a very tender moment that the two of them share, uh, and I think that's might be one of the few scenes we're away from Alice completely, because Alice is off in a other room,
That's true.
yeah,
Not many others.
and I think when you leave I guess your perspective behind for majority of the film, it usually needs to be very, very well done, and I do think this scene is very important, and I think the film would be lesser without it. So
Yeah, definitely strengthened Lydia's return with that. Sprinks, point, please.
do looking what we haven't touched yet.
Caretaker, Elena.
You know what? I'll go to the credits.
I figured you
I
would.
f- I found it a haunting sorrowness that still Alice is engraved in the credits for the duration of the first song before it cuts to an instrumental piece and then fades out.
Uh, did you see the entirety of the credits?
I did.
Yeah, because there's two different segments. You got the white background where it says "Still Alice," and then it just fades. The "Still Alice" title fades, not completely away, but if you go from the start of the credits to the end, it fades heavily, and then
Yeah,
it goes to the black credits where you can still read "Still Alice" in like a gray font, and then that just eventually fades to black. That goes "Still Alice" is completely gone by the end
yeah.
of the
It leaves
credits.
when the song cuts.
this film kind of is a much shorter version of the uh, uh, everything everywhere at the end of time music orchestral journey that is, um, because it's a story told in music. You don't really get much of dialogue or anything else. It's entirely an audio experience. That musical composition, but it's supposed to essentially represent a degrading mind. Um, the over the course of that music orchestral, everything everywhere at the same time, and in a way, I guess the credits reminded me of a much shorter version of that. Like if I closed my eyes, I think it would take me on a similar journey because still Alice is slowly like fading away, as you put it.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what that musical journey is that when the music starts, it's very, very upbeat. Everything is very clear. And over the course of it, like it starts graying out. You start losing instruments and you start losing a lot of the fun bumpy tone, which then eventually turns into why it's so famous. Is just this very, very simplistic and dark notes of music that play at the end of it to kind of signify the collapse of the mind, as it were. One of my more interesting experiences that I had for that.
Sweet. I will bring up probably my largest objective issue with this film. Bold claim. And it's the convenience of the video. The day the
Oh,
caretaker just happens to be gone is the day she finds the video and
no,
has the house to herself to do that.
yeah, and it just happens to be because Lydia's notification rocked up above the folder. Yeah, I'm in agreement. It's probably my biggest objective issue as well.
Yeah.
I appreciate the dramatic tension, but it's still, I don't like what was used to get us here.
Yeah. Well, the caretaker's kid's sick. She's gone today. But I can still make tea.
So
Oh,
you're in the
interesting setup. I wonder what they're gonna do with that.
yeah,
Oh, the video. Make sure no one's home while you do this. Oh, perfect. No one's home.
yeah. I do like the before we get into that. I guess the objective flaw. Just a little quick note. I like that Lydia's frustrated that she's left alone.
Yeah. Because Lydia really cares about the situation.
Mhm.
Uh, Ranks. I guess your thoughts on my objective point. I need to reiterate what it was.
No, no, I got it. I'm just thinking it's hard that I think I'll lean more that it is a problem for the convenience sake of how the movie was written. It was written in that form.
Yes. Well, what aspect of it are you kind of cautious
Not
about?
not knowing this is her first time watching the butterfly video.
Okay, so let's assume she's seen it before and she tries to follow the instructions. We have a couple scenarios. We have she reads it, was going to do something, forgets, and then that's it. She sees it, attempts to do it, and then someone catches her, finds the video, deletes the video. But we have no proof at all that she has come across this video.
No,
So
the catching definitely not.
so I'm going to assume, based off what we have, that this is the first time. Because it's not like the folder when she opens it says "read" or something, like a text message, right?
Oh,
Okay,
that no, that doesn't happen.
yeah. So there's nothing that could really have proof that she's done this before. Uh, and I also wrote how interesting it is that she was able to go up there, forget why she was up there, but remember to come back to the laptop at the stage she's currently at.
Well, I mean,
Seemed
she.
Fine.
I
like a
mean,
lot of factors were working for her here.
Here's the thing. They could. I mean, she could not remember the laptop, but she could remember that she was just doing something downstairs. Come back downstairs, see herself, restart, and then that just started it all over again. We only cut to her halfway through the video again because she forgot. So we missed her returning downstairs for whatever reasons because her face was still on the laptop when she came back down. So I don't know if I have an issue with that necessarily because she would still take an interest in her face.
Guess that's true. And I think the house does get a little bit darker, so maybe it took her an entire day to do that.
Could be, yeah. Though it'd be weird why the caretaker would show up in the middle of the night then, unless there is no one that's supposed to be there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about the caretaker thing. That also seemed convenient.
Hmm.
Right when she's about to take the pills, caretaker shows up,
She
checks
drops the
her
pills and
daughter's
forgets
okay
why
now.
she's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So I really like the scene and concept, but it feels like a lot has to happen for this scenario to play out.
to play out in the exact form that it does. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm inclined
Yeah,
to agree.
I'm more on the convenience of the caretaker showing up at the exact moment
Yeah,
needed.
because there was an excuse that Alice gives, and obviously we had to take Alice's word with a grain of salt at this point. But she gives an excuse as to why the caretaker isn't there, and I don't remember what it is.
Her child's sick.
Child's
Yeah.
sick. So why would she show up at all, or just show up late? What's the? I guess I'm curious about the reasoning within that.
And that just goes on to the hours of the caretaker we're not aware of.
Mhm.
Like if John's not going to be present that night, she could just be there that night.
It's true. Yeah.
No, there's no problems with the pills either. No one finds the pills, be like, where'd these come from? And nothing came of it.
Um. Yeah.
That's
Unless it's like
strange.
specifically her private drawer, but even then, at this point, I don't think she has a much right to left to privacy for her safety. Um, so I feel like someone would have found them at this point.
Yeah. I mean, you could talk about the pills in the drawer, or I was talking about them being spilled on the floor.
No, yeah,
They
spilled
would
on
have
the
found
floor.
that.
Yeah,
They would have been
But
found.
yeah, they would have been spilled on the floor. They would have been found, and not only that, her video is still up on the laptop.
yeah, and the caretaker probably would have found that when she was uh, checking the house out.
Yeah, I guess we're missing that after conversation about. I guess the other characters pretty much removing the option for her to do that, because I'm assuming that as soon as that video was found, it was deleted, the pills were cleaned up and thrown away, or something to that effect.
Yeah, there would have been something happening.
That's a great point to make. I think there is something that happened. I think Lydia's actions. It could be a cause to get Lydia to be there, to give up her LA dream.
We don't have anything that supports that other than she goes back home and she said her
It would be.
manager Bill
She's
was the
been doing so
buzz.
many things of situations of just being over a Skype call that something this severe, I think, caused something that severe for her.
Could be.
Especially with how important John's work is to him, that he can't be with Alice at all times, and he's tried to find ways to, like the moving situation. So
Yeah, this gets into the issue I brought up earlier that was the timing problems. At this point, we have no frame of reference. How long? What's the difference time between this pill incident and when Lydia came? Could be months, could be weeks, could be hours. Who knows?
Yeah.
And that's my problem with it.
Yeah, I get your problem with it. I agree. I think um, I like your read into it, Springs. But I think it's well within Lydia's character have to come out here anyway. So that could
Yeah,
definitely add on to it, but I don't think it's necessarily necessary to read that in order for Lydia to end up coming out there to watch her mom.
because that could have been a very easy line of like John telling her, "I appreciate you coming here after the pill incident" or something. It's something they really easily could have covered if that was their intention. But I will say it is technically possible. I don't see anything that supports it other than the fact that she does show up, which could have just been her on her own anyways.
Like I said, I think you can definitely infer that, and I'm not gonna begrudge you that your take on that if that's what you want to infer from it, because it's plausible. Um, uh, and then we get to see one more uh, yogurt frozen yogurt stop, which I also quite liked because John orders for her because she forgot what her favorite order was, and I think this is when John realizes how lost she actually is, or like this is like the final bit for him. he realizes that she's gone.
Yeah, I think once he pointed out the Columbia building and she didn't know what it was, and she's going off people told her she was a good teacher. She doesn't remember being a good teacher.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's she's gone for him at that point. Kind of a confirmation.
Yeah, I like that there when she's like asks, where can I finish my yogurt first? She's like, yeah, take all the time you want, and you can see the shot lingers on him looking at her, which I quite liked. So we get a lot of his reaction.
Good Alec Baldwin acting as well. I mean, good acting from everybody, but in particular, I think he did pretty well. I haven't seen too many Alec Baldwin movies, but I think this is up there for his acting.
Yep.
What do you think of the shop books?
The shop?
Ice cream
Yogurt.
shop, yogurt,
Oh,
whatever.
Pinkberry. Yeah. No, I mean, same.
Okay.
Uh,
You have something to jump to?
The only other thing I have left here is that it said it's based on a book. Would this be one? Add to writer's collection.
at this point, you guys need to start keeping tabs for me. I have a long reading list. But I'm not opposed to reading this one. I feel like it would be uh, an interesting read. I'd be curious to see what changes they made for the book because I think I liked the movie enough that I'd want to go seek out the book and I guess see what was changed, try to figure out why, and I guess yeah, I have some general curiosity towards it. So I would add this to the list to answer your question.
If you ever come by and visit, my sister owns the book, so you can just borrow it.
Fair enough.
What was I doing? We get the callback, I guess, of the visual cue game or whatever with the neurologist doctor,
Oh yeah,
where she's just not getting it anymore. She never remembers the name, the address. She can't tell what a duck is.
and this is before
Uh,
her speech, right?
yeah, yeah. Yes, it was. I'm glad they didn't just forget that as a thing. They kept that going because we've been seeing her degrade, but it's good to see the professional side of it degrading as well because we saw her at the beginning
And you get
how
to
easy it was.
you get to see a baseline and
Yeah.
compare,
Hmm.
which is nice.
Yes, it is. So, Spring, she said, "You're out, writer. You got more? Dry as well."
I'm running low. Um, Scrolling ahead here. I kind of I actually quite like I guess the last word that Alice latches onto, at least from the point of Lydia's poetry or monologue that she was reading. Um, because that's definitely an interpretation you could walk away with of the poem and stuff like that. With the way she was describing how all the intertwining souls and everything in the monologue. And I actually don't know where it's from, but I am interested in it because I thought it was a very good poem, and I'm not really a big poetry guy or monologue guy. Well, I like monologues, but you get the point. Uh,
Yeah,
good. I liked it.
about love.
It's about love.
And throughout the movie, more towards the later half of it, we get flashbacks of her childhood here and there, and we end with a, a memory fading to white, and that is the part that stuck with me from the first time I watched this. I remembered stuff, but that was the big thing. That was the thing my mind jumps to immediately when I think of this movie.
Yeah.
I think it is a great ending,
The
very
visualization of like,
emotional.
yeah, the visualization of like the memories you're trying to desperately hold on to fading away despite your best attempts to try and hold on to them. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's at the point now where she can barely mutter words, and then it all goes away. She loses herself. We don't know at this point how long she actually lives. she could have another year or two like this. Who knows? But that is the point of which she lost herself.
The memories
Good way of
maketh
portraying
the
it.
man. Or however.
Yeah, memories, not man is. Uh, which leads me to a question I was going to hold to the end. Well, actually, right? Are you done? Or are you still got one?
I
So I have
am
my
done.
closing
Yeah,
question. All
I
right.
am done.
Was did you guys ever cry or tear up?
Yes.
All right. Ryder, did you?
Um, here's the thing, right? I'm very strange when it comes to movies. My answer is no. However, I think I would cry upon a second viewing.
I think
Um,
you brought that up in something before.
yeah. I this
Revisiting
stuff.
a movie can get more out of it,
Yeah, I
emotionally.
think this is definitely one of those films I can see myself crying on my second viewing. I got close a couple times, but I was probably too focused on taking notes and like trying to take in, I guess, the art of it all, that my emotional side was for like it was downplayed a little bit. Whereas when I watch stuff for a second time, I tend to let that come out more. So I definitely see myself crying at certain points in a second viewing.
Yeah, I cried a few times first time I watched it. Teared a couple of times the second. Um, Sprinks, if you're fine saying which part or parts did it get you?
Uh, when she created the butterfly video.
Mhm. And that's the only spot that got you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Uh, I got hit 3 times in this one. When she was talking about how she was losing herself, the very end where it fades to white, and Alec Baldwin crying. Those three. Not many movies get me, but this one got me good. That's why I wanted to show.
Just want to make sure we all got.
Well, I wanted to see how much you guys would. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't know if it was more me having a connection, or but the movie itself was actually enough on its own.
Yeah, I see.
All right. We shall jump into ratings. Going with we'll go Springs.
Okay. Oh boy. I'll start with my objective because Crimson was very curious what my subjective is. So my objective I'll start with. This to me is a very well done film. I think the camera work is great. Uh, the shots are fine. There's some fine shots. I think there's some very exceptional shots. The editing's good. There's some transitional usages I like. Um, the story of what's going on, not just with Alice, but everyone else having a story of their own, with how sometimes minor it may be, still functions very well for a family. Um, Lighting, totally fine. The natural and artificial usages. Uh, there are instances of the writing of the story that I find a little convenient and nitpicky, uh, which pretty much is my main problem situations of what is shown and what is used um, of scenes, which isn't like the question of like what could be there instead, but just like the function of what like the whole act one thing of the words used before a diagnosis of what's going on with Alice or anyone in the family to know, I feel is very selective for the story and not for the natural flow of life. I really think they nailed the tone of realism, of usage of when to cut a conversation, and yeah, I think it's very good. Objectively, I have it as an 8.5. There's a possibility that it could go higher. I don't know. Subjectively, I got emotional to this movie. Um, I the first half hour or so, I really had this movie like a 3.5 subjectively. I think it's because I just get plopped in. You just get started at the dinner, and you just go with the life. And being that there's no movie moments to like get a hook. Like to me, it didn't feel like there was a hook. It was just like you're dropped in naturally in a feel to go along with it. Um, so I started very low, but then the story of what was happening with Alice and how it affected family and herself and everything around to then connect and parallel to the beginning of how it went when the neurologist said this could have been years or happened for years and this is her sidetracking it. So it even starts with possibly her even having it from the get-go beginning. um, I think just is very well done, and I really enjoyed it. um, and it's probably for me the hardest movie we've covered on the podcast for me to watch. um, Subjectively I have it as an 8. However, I don't as of this right now, as time of recording, I don't think I will ever want to watch this movie again.
All right, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, as you hinted at, I had no idea where you were putting this, so that the beginning 3.5 totally made sense. Ending at an 8 totally made sense. And
My overall of this film, what I took away is that it is frighteningly sad.
all right, let's see. One little thing, because I did peruse my notes during that, and I forgot to mention, was Anna's kids. She gave birth,
Oh
and
yeah,
I liked how they were cautious about giving her over to Alice.
yeah. And it's also important
That's
that
the thing.
Alice called Anna Hannah during that scene.
Oh, I missed that one. But it was important that she remembered that there were babies.
Yes.
It wasn't just when Alec Baldwin said, "Well, she just gave birth." She could have easily just said, "Oh, you had a baby." He's like, "Oh, you had the babies," which means she remembered that she actually had twins.
Mm.
Good. We will go with writer next. I'll save myself a list.
All right. I'll do my subjective first. Um, so I, uh, similar to Springs, it's a very great movie. It would be difficult for me to rewatch. Um, I have a little, there's a lot of emotional beats in here that really struck with me. I love how everything comes together and what they intend to do with the story, and uh, it's yeah. I think it's a great movie that I don't want to watch again, which is funny that I'm phrasing it that way. But I obviously wouldn't object to watching it again so long as I have alcohol and I'm with friends and I need to show this movie to somebody because I think they need to see it, that sort of thing. Because I think that's in the vein of how I would see it again. I think would be to try and introduce it to someone and being willing to subject myself to it so that someone else can experience it. Um, I am also at well, I'm at a 7.5, which is not far off, but I think it's fitting for someone because like I don't know if I would voluntarily want to watch this again, but I would love to watch it again just under different circumstances and something of that effect. And like I said, it was very emotionally resonant for me. Um, I uh, my subjective can fluctuate as it were. Um, my objective, let's see. The plot is centered around everyone's interactions with Alice slowly getting worse and worse in terms of her Alzheimer's. And it's easy to track. We can see that being shown in her progression of her declining mental state, which allows us to keep track of time for most of the film. I'm kind of in agreement with Crimson that it starts to fall off a little bit in the final act. And there are some conveniences that also crop up in the third act that I definitely view the caretaker being gone. I'd view that as a plot issue, um, and a plot convenience. Sorry, not really an issue. Um, and there are some little nicks in the film as we go along, but nothing gangrenous as far as plot's concerned. Um, I think in terms of the world building, I think tone is probably the biggest thing that I would like to focus on with regards to the world building, which has been brought up several times over the course of the podcast. They really nailed the feeling of it being real. There's no like glamour movie moment. feeling that kind of bleeds onto the screen, where characters are have an exaggerated reaction for the sake of an audience or the film or the movie that we're watching. It's all very real. The conversations feel very progressive, and it's that they have a logical through line to all the conversations that are being had. And I think what really helps with the tone is so the world building I think is great. Um, and that leads to the other really really strong point is I think the characters are also very beautifully done, from the minor ones to the major ones, because Tom doesn't have much screen time, but I think he's well characterized, and I think he has enough here that I wouldn't want to outright remove him because he does have a purpose, even if it's very very minor. Um, and then Anna is, you know, has her butting heads with Lydia over the course of the film, and that plays into the family dynamic because a lot of what the realism that the tone of the film achieves is through the interactions of its characters, and I think they do the family strife, as it were, very very well because it never reaches the point of hatred, even when or like it never reaches the point of being over dramatic. But you can tell that they still butt heads, but they still love each other. Lydia and Anna probably being the best example of that, where they clearly love each other, but they still butt heads, and it makes the relationships feel very realistic, and it makes them feel very real, like they're all real people. Which I've been using that word a lot. It was very very grounded. Alice starts out as, you know, brilliant uh, linguist, uh, and a brilliant like academic of the mind, both studying the mind and of the mind. Funny enough, I do consider her to be fairly academically intelligent. Given that she's going on book tours and lecture tours and stuff like that, and she has again, she's the one that's overall connected to the story because obviously she's the main character. When she's pushing her family, it comes from a place of love. Like when she's pushing Lydia to go to college, she doesn't remember, but you know, it bleeds into things that she starts forgetting. And it's funny enough, it makes her hard to track her as a character in the traditional sense because the whole film is she's slowly losing part of what makes her herself. Um, which I think is still very beautifully done. And I think the cracks that show up early on where she breaks down to John or where she has more cognitive moments and then, you know, having to forget them the next day. There's a lot of that in her character that shows the degradation of who she was. So it's like you're watching an intentional character assassination slowly, which is very purposeful. And so, funny enough, this is probably one of the few times where I use character assassinations as a thumbs up. You did a good job. Um, you definitely get the sense of she's a different person by the end, which is very much the point of what the story is going for with her character. And I think to support Alice, I think John and Lydia are both fantastic side characters or supporting characters for Alice. And I'm hesitant to call them side characters because they have enough presence that I would consider them to be main characters. Um, John especially comes us as a very nuanced character, and I'm not going to talk about too much about him or Lydia because they've come up constantly through the podcast, and I've brought them up very often for the specific point that they're extremely well characterized. They show a very much nuanced relationship with Alice, and it's the two of them and their relationship with Alice that helps to show how difficult this is on the family because they're obviously the ones that are treating Alice as normal as possible up until they can't. They're the ones that are both trying to maintain their livelihoods to a degree outside of what's happening to Alice and how Alice is slowly taking away their opportunities just by virtue of the fact of what's happening to her. And I think they are both very, very extremely well rounded and well written characters. I'm been bouncing between a 9 and a 9.5. And I'm settling on a 9 for now, and it's mostly because I don't know how much the conveniences of the plot should factor in. Because there are a few as that we've brought up as far as Knicks are concerned. So I'm at a 9, but I'm not opposed to that being higher.
Alrighty. We shall jump to me. So subjectively, um, like you guys, acknowledged, well done movie, got me to feel things, but not one I'd want to watch again. I did the exact same thing as Ryder was saying, where I would probably only watch it to show people, which is what happened here. Uh, so I'll probably watch it again, but this will be to show someone else. Uh, and it's kind of tough to rate something like this subjectively for me because you don't typically uh, enjoy feeling negative emotions. So I don't feel like I should give it something high because I felt negative emotions. It should come down to enjoyment level. And usually I'm like, if I want to see it again, it's probably a 6. If I love it, 7, so on and so forth. But I'm leaving it at a 7.5. Oddly enough, kind of stands as an outlier as my normal way of doing subjective, but it doesn't feel like giving it justice, giving it lower than that because I did feel things, even though I probably don't want to see it again. 7.5. Objectively, I was going into this with very few problems, most of them cropping up in the third act. I was bouncing between two numbers, similar to Ryder, between a 8.5 and a 9. And I was like, all right, hopefully you guys will bring up a few negatives to drop it down to an 8.5. That didn't happen. Sprinks, you made some good points with the phone bit, but I'm still going to stick with the independence thing. And you also brought up something else. And what was the other thing you and I debated for a bit in the first act? Uh,
Uh,
shoot,
I brought up the use of the words used by the writers of a lot of like, "Do you remember? Don't forget."
that was it. But you made some good points, and I did take them into account. But it was not enough to bump me down to the 8.5. I'm sticking with a 9. I do think all the characters, uh, large and small, all have a role here with how they bounce off of each other and create dynamics, believable dynamics, as we keep stating. Uh, the camera work is mostly average. It's usually how they play with the focus, and I mean even the handheld. It's pretty common to utilize that, but the way they utilize the focus in this is quite heavy compared to most things I've seen. So thumbs up on that, I guess. The acting is great. Obviously, Julianne Moore got an award for that. The only award that this movie got was Best Actress. They didn't get anything else out of it, which seems kind of a shame to me. The only negatives that I stuck with by the end was having no grounding of time at the end after the baby, because I think that can really affect um, Lydia's position of coming back. Because Spranks, you brought up a good point. It could have been the pill incident that brought her there, but we don't know. We don't know how time has passed between that, uh, and we get a large jump between that and her barely being able to talk. So it would have been nice to get some time frame. No one finding the phone in the month. It's a nitpick, but it's something to bring up. No one finding the pills either in the drawer or on the floor that we are aware of. Obviously, someone did, but they never bring it up. The convenience of the caretaker popping up right when Alice is about to take the pills. Very convenient. And also convenient the caretaker was not home the day she stumbled across the file. So, all that into account, I'm giving it a 9, but I could drop to an 8.5 if someone in the comments are like, hey, here's some problems you didn't talk about. That's what I'm sticking with 9. Anything else before Ryder signs us off?
I don't So,
All right. Well, in that case, gentlemen, uh, thank you for listening, audience. Whether it be Spotify, Amazon, Castbox, iHeartRadio, Pocket Casts, or Samsung and Google Podcasts, and uh, I think that was all of them. Yeah, that was all of them. And if you happen to be on our visual side of things, being a YouTuber Rumble, watching along, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. As always, I have been a Geeky Writer,
I'm Crimson Maroon.
and I'm Springs.
and we will catch you next time. Later, everybody.
Bye.
Toodaloo.